In this video, I will cover up the total complete tutorial of this Cat Dodge the Block game. I already made two episodes or two tutorials, you can say. First movement, then slowing down time, something like that. I guess I already made those videos private. Instead, I want to compile all of those videos at once. So that's why I made those private instead of public. So I just want to cover up the whole tutorial in one shot. Okay, so timestamps will be in the description if you wanna jump into some part in some parts. If you just came from for some parts, you can do that. I have timestamps in the description, and all of the things that we need for the game will be in the description. And we will make something like this. Seems pretty crazy and so much fun to play. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this complete tutorial of making this simple casual dodge the block game. So let's dive. I have opened up an empty project, as you can see. So let's go to main camera. I'm gonna change the color of the main camera. Select the main camera in the hierarchy, and let's choose a color something like red. I'm gonna choose this. Something like this. I guess this would be fine. And let's create a background to make it a little bit saturated from our main camera. So we can see the player if it's in the field. In the game, basically it shouldn't get out of that background. So let's do that. Go to hierarchy one more time, right click, then go to 2D object sprite and select this square. And select this drag tool, and let's scale this up and hold down Alt to scale it up from the center, as you can see. So I'm gonna move the center X position of this square in the middle. So let's set this to 0, as you can see. And I'm gonna name this square to something like background. Let's call it background. Background. Sorry, this would be background. And what we want to do, let's choose a different color for this background. So click on sprite renderer, then color, click on this pencil icon. Let's choose the same color as the camera. And let's make it a little bit different, something like I'm gonna tilt it down. So as you can see, now we can see the difference. So the player will just be in this field and it shouldn't get outside. So that is the reason of making it. So what we gonna do next, so let's create our player game object. So go to hierarchy one more time, right click, then 2D object sprite, select this square one more time, go to transform, right click, and reset the transform. Let's scale this square. Firstly, let's rename this square to player. Player, and go to let's scale up in the X something like a little bit larger. So I'm gonna choose 2.5. And select this move tool. Let's bring it down to the bottom side. Bottom side, and let's add up two component, one for collision detection, which is box collider 2D, and one for our rigid body. Rigid body for adding up gravity. So let's do that. So select the player game object, click on add component, and find over there rigid body 2D, and let's choose the gravity scale to 0, so it will not fall down due to gravity. Or what you can do, you can set this body type to kinematic, so it will so the body will stay right there, it will not fall down due to our gravity. And let's choose collision detection to continuous, so it will continuously detect any collision. And for collision, let's add up one more component. So click on add component, find over there box collider 2D, and now the collider just resizes as the size of the sprite, so we don't need to edit. Click on this edit collider. So what we want to do, Now if I hit this play button, this player game object will be right there. So we want to move this player to the right and left, okay, left side. So we will make a script, and a script will control this thing, okay. So but the problem is we cannot able to see our player game object, because the background is all the way up and the player game object layer is all the way behind, okay. So let's make some sorting layer for it. So let's click on this player game object first, okay, or this background. Let's choose this background, go over to sprite renderer, additional setting, click on sorting layer, click on add sorting layer, and hit this plus icon. Make for one for background and one for our player game object, okay, and drag the background all the way behind and drag the player all the way to the up side, okay, to the front side you can call. So let's choose this background, let's assign it as a background sorting layer, and let's choose this player as a player sorting layer. Now we assign it. Now we are able to see our player game object, but we are not able to move it left and right. So let's create a script. Oh, okay, player movement script. So go to assets, right click, create C# script, name it to something like player movement or movement. I already created. So select the player game object and drag that script to add component section, okay, and double click that to open up in Visual Studio. So we will move to update function. We have start function and update function. Let's move to update function. Over here we will use a inbuilt function of Unity, okay, that is called input.getAxis, okay, and this function over here will take the axis in which axis you want to move. So we want to move in the x axis like this, we don't want to move in the y, so we will leave it y to something like -4, I guess. Let's bring it a little bit up, -3 would be fine. I'm gonna set that 0. So basically we want to move in the x axis, okay. So in quotation, okay, input.getAxis will take the axis name. So in quotation we have to type. So let's pass horizontal, which means x axis we will move around, okay, and close that up with semicolon. So this function over here gonna return us or give us 1, -1 or 0 depending upon what key we are holding on our keyboard. Let's suppose we hold down A key, so this function will give us -1. If we hold down D key, so this function will give us 1. And if we just lift off both of my finger from both of those keys, this function will give us, and by default it will be 0. So let's store the result into a variable, okay. So let's create a private variable, okay, private float variable, okay. Let's call it something like movement, okay. And we know variable are just like containers, we can put values right over there into them, okay. And let's set this movement equal to, okay, movement equal to our this. So this movement can be -1, 0 or +1 depending upon what key we holding down on our keyboard, okay. So Control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity. But the problem is we made the field private, so we're not gonna able to expect that field will appear just underneath our player script, okay. So what we have to do, even if you want to see a private field in the inspector, you just need to go to inspector. In the top right you can see 3 icon, okay. Click on it and set normal mode to debug mode. As you can see, we are now able to see the movement underneath of our player script, okay. Now if I hit this play button and try to hold down A or D key on my keyboard, this movement will just gonna vary upon depending upon what key I am just holding down. If I hold down A key, this will be -1, okay. As you can see, it gets -1, and if I try to hold down D key, it goes +1, okay. And if I just lift off fingers from both of those keys, as you can see, movement just becomes right away 0, okay. So what we want to do, I'm gonna unplay this and I'm gonna go back to normal mode one more time. So if we select the player game object, then go to transform, then position, and play around with x axis, we can able to see the player game objects gets to the right and left side. So basically we just need access of this x position, and we will replace this x with that movement. And we know movement can be -1, 1 or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. Let's assume we hold down D key, so this will be 1, so it will go all the way to the right. And if we hold down A key, this will be -1, okay, something like -1, it will all go to the left, okay. And if we set this to 0, so it will just gonna stay whatever the position goes, okay. It will not move basically, okay. So let's do the thing, okay. So firstly we need to move over to transform, then position, then this X, okay. So let's open up our script one more time by double clicking on it, and let's go to bottom. Over here we will go to transform, then position, okay. Basically we going over to this transform, then position, and we will set equal to plus equal new vector 3. We just adding okay, we adding to our current position, and we know vector 3 has 3 axes, okay. It has x axis, y axis, and the z axis, okay. Close that up with semicolon. So we want to move the game object in the x axis as you seen, so we will replace this x with our movement, okay. And we don't want to move in the y axis, so what we will do in the y axis, we will put 0, and the same thing we will do for our z axis, which is the depth one, okay. And the problem is that so this movement can be -1, +1, or 1, okay. So over here it will be fast enough, okay. So I'm gonna make some spaces right over here. So let's suppose we need to multiply this movement with time dot delta time. Why? Let's suppose you do have a super fast computer, so in that case this update function will run 120 frame in 1 second, okay. So in my computer this update function will run something like around in 1 second 60 frames. So it's so the frame rate depends upon the system, okay. So you can see there is huge difference between our frame rates. To make it restrict, okay, to make it constant, what we have to do, we need to multiply this movement with time dot delta time, okay. So we need to multiply time dot delta time. So whatever computer you run this game, the frame rate will be constant, okay. So Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. So this player game object will gonna move left and right depending upon what key we holding down. If we holding down D key, it will go all the way to the right. If we hold down A key, it will go all the way to the left side, okay. So just wait for to compile, and let's hit this play button in the top, okay. And we're gonna able to see this will move to the left and right, okay. So as you can see, if I am just holding down D key, so it's going all the way to the right, and if I holding down A key, it's going all the way to the left. But if I just lift off my fingers from both of those keys, as you can see, it just stops right there. So the problem is we just going too much slowly. So what we want to do, we want to multiply that with movement with some speed, so we can go faster, okay. So let's make a public variable, okay. So let's make it public, so we don't need to come to the script and change the value over again and again and match up the speed, okay. So that is the reason we're making this field public float, and let's call it something like speed. And by default I'm going to give some like 10 unit of speed, okay. So let's multiply whole thing, this movement, or whole this thing, okay, with our speed, and we know speed is 10, okay. So Control S to save your code one more time, and let's move to Unity. So in the right and left we will move with 10 units, okay, because we multiplying movement which is 1 into 10, which is 10, okay. So it can be -10 +10 depending upon what key we holding down. So we will move faster than before, okay. So you can adjust the speed over here, so that is the reason of making that field public, okay. You can adjust the speed in the inspector. Now if I hit this play button one more time, we will go to the left and right side with this amount of speed, which is 10, okay. But you can adjust upon it according to your needs, okay. So let's hold down D key, as you can see. But the problem is we going outside of this background, which we're not gonna go like over like this, okay. So we wanna just gonna restrict the value of this player right over here. So you can note the position in the X, which is 5, I guess. So 5 is all the way to the right, and if I set this to -5 of this player position, as you can see it's all the way to the left side. So we want to restrict this x position or x axis, as you can see, with this -5 and the 5, between -5 and 5. Okay, so we have to use a function. So let's open up our script one more time by double clicking on it. Let's go to bottom in the update function. So we have to use this mathf.clamp function. Okay, and this function over here will take the value in which value you want to restrict the value, basically restrict the position. Okay, so seen that in x position, in the x axis, as you can see. So we need to go over to transform, then this x. So we want to clamp this x position with -5 minimum, which is minimum, and the maximum is +5. Okay, so we want to restrict this x position. So let's go over to transform. Okay, so transform, then position, then we want to restrict this x position, and comma, we have to pass the minimum and the maximum value. So the minimum we'll see, which is -5f, and the maximum is +5f or 5f, and close that off with semicolon. So this function will clamp the value in the x position of player with -5 and 5. Okay, between -5 and 5. So this will return us a float value. Okay, so let's store the value into another container or variable. Okay, so let's call it something like float x clamping. Okay, you can call something like a horizontal clamp, and let's set equal to this. So this x clamping will be restrict with -5 and 5 in the x position only player. Okay, and so next thing, we have to set this value in the x position. Okay, so we need to move over to this transform, then position, and we have to set this x position with this x clamping, and we know x clamping will be restrict around -5 and 5, between -5 and 5. Okay, in the x axis only, as you can see we pass as a first argument. Okay, so let's move to position. So firstly we just going over to this transform, then position. Okay, and we will set equal to new position or new vector 3, you can call. Okay, and we know vector 3 has x axis, y axis, and the z axis. Okay, so let's pass x let's replace this x with x clamping, and we know what x clamping is doing. Okay, so let's pass x clamping, and for y, what we will do, we will leave it as it is, something like we just I guess in -3 in y axis, as you can see. So we don't want to restrict in the y axis because we're not moving in the y axis, so that is the reason. So what we have to type over there, we will type transform dot position dot y. It's basically means the current position of the player in the y axis. So if I move to unity, as you can see, which is -3 in the y axis player position. Okay, so this over here will be -3, and let's do the same thing for z axis. We want to leave it. Okay, we don't want to restrict, so let's pass transform. Okay, transform, then position dot z. Okay, so Control S to save your code. So we're setting the position of the player with this. Okay, with a new position, just replacing the x, which is we just restricting the x position with a -5 and +5, which is all the way to the right and all the way to the left. Okay, we're restricting the x value only, basically the x axis, and we just leaving the y and the z axis as it is. Okay, so Control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to unity. So the value, so we cannot go further beyond something like +5 or -5, even we just trying holding down multiple times on our keyboard as much as hard we can. Okay, we're not gonna able to go outside of that area. So if I hit this play button now and try to hold down D key, even I'm just all the way to the right side. Okay, we cannot go further beyond our +5 position. Okay, so just wait. So as you can see, I cannot go. So the player just gets stopped right at 5 position. Okay, x position you can call, and if I try to hold down A key, as you can see, we cannot go further beyond -5. Okay, so that is the thing. I hope you get the basics idea of it. So we have to cover a lot of things in the future tutorial as well. You will get all of the videos over on my channel of this torch block tutorial, you can call. Okay, and lastly, thanks for watching this video. I hope you get the basics idea of it, how you can implement movement and restrict the value. Okay, 2D object sprite and select this square, and let's name this square to something like block, and go to transform, right click and reset it the transform, so it will reset the position. Let's scale up the block in the x-axis something like 3.5. okay, so as you can see, let's add up. I'm gonna drag this up over here by selecting this move tool. Let's add up two components, one for adding up our gravity, so we need to add up rigid body 2D for adding up gravity. And one thing we have to do, also we need to attach box collider component. Okay, collider component basically for collision detection. So select the game object, here click on add component, find over there rigid body 2D, and I'm gonna scale up the gravity a little bit, something like 2. okay, so it will fall down twice as normal, and choose collision detection to continuous, so it will continuously detect any collision. okay, so let's add up another collider, which is box collider 2D for collision detection. So click on this add component and find over there box collider 2D as well. okay, so now we added two components, one for collision and one for our gravity. okay, now if I hit this play button, this block game object will fall down on top of our player. okay, because we added up gravity and we added up a box collider 2D component, which for collision detection. okay, and what we have to do, we need to turn this block game object as a prefab. okay, so now as you can see, it's get fall down. Now I'm gonna unplay this and select the game object and drag it to assets folder in project tab. Now it's turned blue. Okay, basically prefab. Now if I delete from the scene view, I can drag that game object, that block game object from that assets folder by directly dragging it into as a scene or hierarchy. okay, so I don't need it right now. I'm gonna spawn this block game object. We will create 3 points, and from those points we will spawn this block. okay, so let's delete from this scene view. Now firstly make a prefab of this game object, basically means copy. okay, so I'm gonna delete it. So let's create those 3 points, go over to hierarchy, right click, okay, then create empty game object, and let's call this game object to something like spawn points. okay, spawn points, go to transform, right click and reset it, and let's choose an icon for it, something like yellow. okay, so right click on this spawn point. I'm really sorry for the background noise. okay, so right click on the spawn points, then go to create, click on create empty game object, and let's drag this game object over here. okay, over here in the inspector, select an icon for it. okay, so I'm gonna select this yellow as not a green. I'm gonna select this yellow, so let's drag it a little bit up. okay, and this is our first point. I want to duplicate this point twice. okay, so select the game object one more time, this point, Control D for duplicating it, and let's move it to something like 5, I guess. Not 5, I'm gonna do something like 4.2, and let's duplicate this point one more time and move it to the left side, all the way to the left. okay, select the game object, Control D, and let's move it to something like minus 4.2, so it will be all the way to the left side. okay, so as you can see, we have 3 points. So I'm gonna drag this point a little bit up. okay, we have 3 points now. From this point we want to spawn this block game object. okay, so that's why we turned as a prefab. So we want to spawn this block game object from this point, but we will choose a random point and we will leave it as a blank, so this player can pass through and can make high score. okay, I hope you get the idea. So we will just choose 2 points. From those 2 points we will spawn, and we will leave it 1 point as a blank, so player can pass through and make some high score. Before it, we need to make the spawner script. okay, so go over to assets, right click, create. okay, C# script, name it to something like spawner. Go over to hierarchy, right click, create empty game object. Let's call it something like spawner as well. Okay, go over to transform, right click and reset it. I'm gonna and let's I already created the script, so I'm gonna select the script and drag it to add component section, or click on this add component and find the script name by typing it. I'm gonna drag this spawner script top of my hierarchy. Okay, so let's double click this to open up in Visual Studio. So it will take a few seconds and it will open up in our preferred Visual Studio Code editor. So as you can see, we have started an update function. So what we want to do, we want to spawn. Okay, so let's make a spawn function for it. So let's go to bottom. Okay, let's go to bottom and let's create public. Make it public if you want to call this function from another class, so mark as public. Okay, and for function we have to type void. Let's call this function spawn. Okay, and make first bracket and some curly brackets. So what we want to do inside this function, we want to use a for loop. Okay, I'm gonna explain what for loop is going to be used. Okay, so type for loops. Okay, and type tap twice on your keyboard, so it will automatically just get the for loops. So this for loop start from 0. Okay, and it will run till it breaks out this condition. This is second, I is lesser than length. I'm gonna explain. Okay, so I'm gonna make this comment for now. Okay, for spawning what we have to do. Okay, for spawning, so I'm gonna explain it how it's gonna work. For spawning, okay, any game object, we have to use this instantiate function. Okay, an instantiate function, as a first argument, it will take the game object you want to instantiate, okay, or spawn. So in our case, we want to spawn this block game object, so we need this block game object. And the second thing, it will take the position from where you want to spawn. So we want to spawn from this position, so we need all of this position. Okay, so we need to make an array. And third argument, it will take the rotation. Okay, rotation basically we will pass quaternion dot identity. It's basically means no rotation. Okay, so firstly we need those variables. We need the game object and we need the all of the points. Okay, so I'm gonna delete it for now. So let's go to top of our class. Okay, let's assign those. Firstly, we will create an empty game object field. Okay, make it public so we can see it. Okay, so let's call this something like block prefab, I guess. Okay, block prefab. And the second thing, end up with semicolon. And the second thing, we need all of this point. Okay, so and transform is responsible for position. As you can see, transform has position, rotation and scale. So basically we need transform, but we can see we have more than 1 point. Okay, so that's why we need to make an array. Array basically container, as a container it can hold up multiple values. It can be position, it can be game objects, it can be names, numbers or whatever, blah blah blah. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. So let's make an array. So make sure you making it public as well. Okay, and make it public, and that is transform. We know transform basically position, referencing position. Okay, and for array we have to use this square bracket. It basically means array. Okay, array basically holds up multiple values. Okay, and we have to name the array. Let's call it something like spawn positions. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. Firstly, we need to assign those variables, then we can use it or spawn it. Okay, so in underneath our spawner script, we would expect to see that game object field will be appear first, which says block prefab. So what we need to drag this block prefab game object out there. And the second thing, we have to drag all of these 3 points right in our transform basically spawn position array. Okay, so so we will do that. Okay, so just wait for to compile. It will take a few seconds, and once it's done, so in the inspector you can see lock button. Okay, firstly lock it. Okay, lock it, and now select the block game object and drag it to block prefab field. Now we have the block game object, but the thing is that over here spawn position array is empty, which says 0, basically means empty. So select all of this point by holding down shift. Okay, select all of them and drag it to that array. So now as you can see, we have all of the points. So 0 is the middle one, as you can see. So I'm gonna unlock it. Okay, now if I select this spawner game object, as you can see, 0 is the middle one. Okay, 0 is the middle one, and index of 1 is the right one, and index of 2 is the left one. Okay, so basically all of this point gets assigned with some certain index. So 0 basically referencing the middle one, and 1 is the referencing right, and 2 is the referencing the left one. Okay, so now we will use the for loop. So let's go to this spawn function one more time, and inside of it we will use this for loop. Okay, and tap twice. Okay, press twice tap button on your keyboard to fill this. Okay, so we will replace this length with our spawn position. Okay, spawn position dot length. So what does it mean? Spawn position dot length. Spawn position dot length basically means how many points we have. So as you can see, we have 3 points, 1 2 3. So this over here, spawn position dot length over here will be 3. So this for loop start from 0, as you can see. Okay, it's a start from 0, and we know I over here for the first time will be 0, and spawn position dot length over here is 3. So we know 0 is lesser than 3, so the condition over here it's true. Okay, and the next time what we doing, we just adding. So 0 plus 1 will be 1 now. Okay, so this whatever you write in between these curly brackets will be execute. Okay, so now for the second time this I becomes 1 because we added up in the next time. As you can see, I plus plus basically means adding up 1. Okay, so 0 plus 1 over here becomes 1. So now this one I over here is 1. Okay, and we know 1 is still lesser than 3. Okay, so this condition is still true. So whatever you write in between these curly brackets will be execute. Now this is already 1. So 1 plus 1 is now 2. Okay, now becomes 2. So I third time this will be 2. Okay, and we know 2 is lesser than 3. So the condition over here is true. So still this whatever you write between this curly bracket will still be executed. Okay, now 2 plus 1 will be 3. Okay, now this one will be 3. Okay, so now I is 3. Okay, I is 3. So 3 is not lesser than 3 now. So this statement breaks out now. Okay, so whatever you write in between these curly brackets now will not be executed anymore. Okay, so this for loop will stop running right there. So what we want to do in this for loop, we want to spawn from all of these points, and we will choose a random point and we will leave it as a blank. We don't want to spawn from that point, so player can pass through, but we will do it later for now. Okay, so let's do the thing for now. For spawning we have to use this instantiate function. Okay, and as a first argument we have to pass the game object we want to spawn. So we assign it a block prefab. So let's pass it, and we drag it the block prefab right there as you seen. Okay, so let's pass as the first argument, and the second thing it will take the position. Okay, so let's pass our array. Okay, spawn position, and make this first bracket. And if you pass 0, so 0 basically means the middle point. As you can see, it's getting assigned within some certain index. And if you pass 1 over here, so it will be spawned from this point. If you pass 2, it will be spawned from this point. But what we want to do, we want to pass this I, and we know I will be start from 0 and it will go up to 2. So basically it will spawn from all of this point. Okay, so as you can see, so I will be for the first time this will be 0, and then second time this for loop will run. So I over here will be 1. So 1 basically the right point, and the third time this I will be 2. Okay, this I will be 2. So 2 basically this left one. Okay, so it will be spawned from all of those points. Okay, and after that we have to type dot position, because those are position. Okay, and the third argument comma we have to pass rotation. Okay, so we will pass quaternion dot identity. It's basically means no rotation. Okay, no rotation, and close that off with semicolon. Okay, and we also need to call this function. We make the function and we never calling it, so this line of code will not be executed. Okay, so the block prefab game object will not be spawned from that top. from those point. Okay, so let's for testing purposes, let's call this function in the start of the game. Okay, start, and we know start function get called when the game start. So in the start of the game, and it's called one time, and we will call this function, and we know what spawn function is doing. Okay, so let's call that out. So spawn, we have to name the function and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. Now if we hit this play button in the start of the game, though that block prefab game object will be spawned from all of those points. Okay, because we used for loops, and for loops will run till this statement breaks out. Okay, this spawn position dot length. Okay, so once this one becomes 2, okay, so 2 plus 1 for the fourth time will be 3, and we know 3 is not lesser than 3 over here. So this for loops will stop running, and if it is stopped, so this line of code will not be execute whatever you write in between these curly brackets inside of our for loops. Okay, inside for loops. So I hope you got the idea how for loops works. Okay, so just wait for to compile, and when it's done, hit the play button in the top, and gonna able to see the change. Okay, now if I hit this play button in the top, okay, we would expect to see that block game object will be spawned from all of this point, because for loops start from 0, so 0 is middle one, and it will go up to 2. Okay, 2 is the left one, so it will just gonna spawn from all of those points. Okay, so just wait for to see. So as you can see, it gets all from spawn from the all of the points. Now if I play on one more time, we would expect to see one more time that block game object will be spawned from all of this point. Okay, because of for loops. But we want to choose a random one, and we wanna leave it, we don't wanna spawn from that point, so this player can pass through and make some high score. Okay, so let's do that. So let's open up our script one more time by double clicking on it. Okay, so before we spawn, as you can see, we using for loop. Before we spawn or use for loop, okay, we will create a we will use this random, okay, random dot range function. Okay, and this random dot range function, we have to pass a minimum and the maximum. Okay, so minimum we will pass 0, so 0, and maximum we will pass spawn position dot length. Okay, dot length, and close that up with semicolon. So this random dot range function over here will pick up, okay, between our 0 and spawn position dot length, and we know what spawn position dot length is. Spawn position dot length over here means how many points we have. We know we have 3 points. Okay, so this over here will be 3, but this random dot range function over here gonna pick up between 0 and 3. Okay, it will not include 3, but it will definitely gonna include 0, 1 and 2. Okay, so this over here random dot range function gonna pick up 0, 1, 2, but it can be random. Okay, so let's store whatever this function picks up, let's store it into another variable. Okay, so that will be integer whole number. Okay, let's call it something like index, or something like call it avoid point, and let's set equal to this. So this avoid point can be 0, 1 and 2, because this random dot range function over here will pick up a random number between 0 and 3, so it can be 0, 1 and 2, and then we storing that number into this container or variable, you can say integer. Okay, so this avoid point over here can be 0, 1 and 2. Okay, so before we spawn, as you can see, instantiate function is responsible for spawning our game object. Okay, so before we spawn, we will check if this avoid point, okay, if this avoid point is equals to something like I. Okay, if that is the case, what we want, we want to spawn. Okay, we don't basically we want to spawn. If this avoid, we don't want to spawn. Okay, basically we don't want to spawn. Let's suppose this avoid point, this random dot range function picks up 0. Okay, let's 0 basically means the middle point. Okay, so this avoid point over here will be 0, and we know I start from the 0, so this over here will be 0. So 0 is equals to 0. So in that case, make some curly brackets. What we want to do, we basically we don't want to spawn. Okay, we don't want to spawn in that situation. If this avoid point is equals to I, so in that situation we don't want to spawn. So let's suppose this avoid point now picks up 1. Okay, so this avoid point over here will be 1, and we know this for loop in the next time or the second time this I over here will be 1. Okay, because as you can see 0 plus 1 will be 1, so 1 is equals to 1. So in that situation I don't want to spawn any game object. But if this avoid point is not equal to I, okay, so let's suppose this avoid point 1, okay, 1 is not equal to 1, okay, so in that situation I do want to spawn. So let's put this line of code inside Control X for cut, Control V for paste. So we checking, so let's assume this avoid point over here is 1. Okay, so 1 is not equal to 1, so in that situation this statement will be run. Okay, so 1 is not 1, so this avoid point, let's suppose this one over here is this I start from 0, so it will be spawned from this point. Okay, 0 basically means the middle point and 1 is the right point, so we just only checking for the right one, but we assume it, but this avoid point can be random. You have to make sure, okay, this avoid can be random. We just assume it this, let's suppose this avoid point picks up or this avoid point becomes 1, so 1 over here. Okay, so if that is the case, if avoid point is not equal to I, okay, so 1 is not equal to 1, we assume it. So in that situation we spawning, so this so this over here I will be spawned from this middle point and this point. Okay, we just taking for 1. Okay, 1 is the right, all the way to the right one, but we know avoid point can be random. Okay, so let's suppose second time this I over here, this avoid point becomes 0, so 0 is not equal to 0, so this I now this will not be, so this I over here will be 1 and 2, it will not be 0 now. Okay, so 1 and 2 basically means 1 is the right point and 2 is the all the way to the left point, so it will leave this the middle point. I hope you get the idea. So avoid point over here just picks up a random number. Okay, so Control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. We would expect to see that one avoid point can be random, so one of these point will be blank. We not spawning. Okay, we checking if that avoid point is not equal to that I, then we spawning, else we just avoiding. Okay, so now if I hit this play button, that avoid point can be random, and we would expect to see that one of this point will be blank, so this player can pass through. Okay, we just leaving one point. Okay, and we not spawning from that point. As you can see, it picks up the middle one for this time. Okay, now if I hit this play button one more time, now this can be a random number. Okay, so just wait for to compile. Okay, just wait for to compile, and let's see it should picks up. Now it still takes the middle point. Now if I hit this play button one more time, okay, if I hit this play button one more time on my play button, we should expect to see this we gonna choose a random point and not gonna spawn from that, so we just still picking up 0. Okay, so I guess we did some mistake, so let's take one more time. We should expect to see. Okay, just play around with I guess you gonna able to get it. Okay, so just wait. As you can see, it picks up random now, so it's became random, so it's just blanket this one. It's not block game object not get spawned from this point. Okay, as you seen. So now if I hit this play button, we should able to see now another point from it will be blank. It will be spawn, not gonna spawn from that point. Okay, and you can call that spawn function after some period of time, so the game will run. As you can see, it's get middle. So I hope you get the idea. so it just picking up the random. For this time it just picking up the midpoint too many times, but surely it not gonna do the same thing for you, okay, for my game as well. Okay, so I hope you get the idea how you can use for loops to create some kind of blank, or to hold to spawn from all of point. Okay, so I hope you get the basics idea of it. Let's open up our script by double clicking on it, okay, inside of Visual Studio. And what we want to do, we want to spawn these blocks after some period of amount of time, something like after 2 seconds. You can define after 5 seconds, it's totally up to you. Okay, we will get into that. Okay, so let's dive in. So let's open up our script by double clicking on quickly, and let's go to spawner script. Okay, so where we spawning, so we calling this spawn function in this start of the game. I made it come in, as you can see. So let's call this function after some period of time, and we know what this function is doing. It just it just spawning blocks from those 3 points. Okay, so we will make two variables. One those variable will keep track of when we should call this spawn function, and we know what spawn function is doing. So let's do that. So let's create a public float. Okay, make this parameter public. Okay, and let's call it something like start time, and I'm gonna give it by default to 2. Basically means after 2 seconds I'm gonna spawn. I'm gonna call this spawn function, and we know what spawn function is doing. Okay, and let's make another field which will be private, and okay, and it doesn't need to be public, and I'm gonna call this one time between. Okay, time between spawn. Okay, time between spawn, and by default I'm not gonna set to any value. Okay, and close that off with semicolon, and let's go to start function, and we know a start function get called when the game start. Okay, so in the start of the game, what I want to do, I want to set this time between spawn. Okay, time between spawn to our start time. Okay, start time, close that off with semicolon. So this time between spawn will be 2. Why? By default we have given start time which is 2. So in the start of the game we're setting this time between spawn to start time, and we know start time is 2, so that's why this time between spawn will be 2. Okay, so let's go to update function now, and we know update function calls every single frame, and over here we will check. Okay, we will check if time between spawn. Okay, if time between spawn is lesser than or equal to 0f, and make some curly brackets. So we do know why in the start of the game time between spawn will not be 0 or lesser than 0. As you can see, time between we set by default, in the start of the game, which is a start time, and a start time is 2, so that's why this time between spawn will be 2. So time between spawn will not be lesser than or equal to 0. So in that situation, what I want to do, I want to subtract from this time between spawn some unit every single frame till it hits 0. Okay, so else, okay, else if time between spawn is not lesser than or equal to 0, in that situation what I want to do, I want to subtract from this time between spawn by some unit minus equal time dot delta time. So eventually this time between spawn gonna hit 0, because we're doing inside update function, and we know update function calls every single frame. So every single frame we subtracting from that time between spawn with minus time dot delta time. Okay, so time between spawn is 2, so we subtracting every single frame, so eventually it gonna hit 1, then 0. Okay, so when it hits 0, what I want to do, I want to call this function. Okay, this is spawn function, and we know what a spawn function is doing. It is basically just spawning the blocks from those points. Okay, so let's call this function, and spawn function, make first bracket and close that off with semicolon. Okay, and after that calling this spawn function right after when time between spawn hits 0, I call this function. After doing that, I'm gonna set this time between spawn one more time to our start time, and we know start time is 2. Okay, so I'm gonna set this time between spawn to our start time. Okay, and we know start time is by default to close that up with semicolon. So time between spawn over here will be 2 again. Okay, so in that situation time between spawn is not lesser than or equal to 0, so this is statement else is statement will run. Okay, and we know what we're doing inside else statement, we just subtracting, and again it will hit somehow 0. Okay, and when it hits 0 we calling this spawn function. Basically we spawning blocks, and after that we setting back time between spawn to start time, basically 2. Okay, so every after 2 seconds this spawn function will be called. So every after 2 seconds this spawn function will call, basically means every after 2 seconds those blocks will be spawned from those points. Okay, every after 2 seconds, but you can adjust this start time, so this time between spawn can change something like if we put 3, so after 3 seconds, okay, this time between spawn will hit 0, and this spawn function will be called. But it's totally after you, after some period out of time if you want to call. Okay, it's totally after you and adjustable, so that's why I made that field public. Okay, I made this to field very well to keep track of the time. Okay, and control S to save your code. So basically this line of code will be looped forever. So when it hits 0 time between spawn, so we setting back again 2 time between spawn to a start time, which is 2, and we know in that situation this statement will not run, so this else condition will run, and we know we just subtracting in else condition, so eventually it will hit 0 time between spawn one more time. So when it hits 0 we setting back, basically this line of code will be looped forever. Okay, so control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity. So every after 2 seconds that spawn function will be called, and we know what we have done inside of that spawn function. We just spawning basically from those 3 points top of our basically from this point every after 2 seconds. But you can adjust upon it the variable if you just wanna call it something like after 3 seconds. It's totally adjustable. Okay, you can call that. So just wait for to compile, and if I select this spawner game object and spawner script, as you can see start time, and by default I have given 2, but you can adjust it. Okay, now if I hit this play button in so in the start of the game the blocks will not be spawned, but when it becomes 2 seconds, when the time pass 2 seconds, its blocks will be spawned. Okay, so as you can see after 2 seconds those blocks getting spawned. Okay, every after 2 seconds, as you can see, and we just choosing a random one and we leaving as a blank because the player can pass through it, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea. But the problem is that our games is holding too many game objects. As you can see, the hierarchy is filled with block clone, as you can see. But we also need to destroy this block game object after some period of time. Basically it will hold too many game objects. Okay, so when this game objects from out of the game, we should delete it because it will hold too many game objects. At a moment this game will be laggy because it's gonna hold too many game objects, and it will affect our frame rates. So frame rate will go below. Okay, something like below than 60, and we know if the frame rate goes below, the game will look like laggy, as you know. So higher the frame rates, the smoother the game will run. Okay, so basically we need to delete this all of this game object after some period of time. Okay, so let's do that. So where we spawning, so let's open up our script by double clicking on it. Okay, so as you can see in the bottom, we instantiating that block prefab at this I position. Okay, so what we want to do, after instantiating or spawning, we want to store this game object in totally another game object as like container. Okay, so let's so we spawn it this block prefab at this I position, as you can see, with no rotation. So let's store this game object into another game object. Okay, so let's that will be game object, let's call it temp. Okay, temp basically means temporary, and let's set equal to this. So basically firstly we spawning that block game object, and after that we storing that block game object, block prefab game object, into this temp variable or container, you can say. So basically we also need to delete this container after some period of time. So basically whole container. so the game will be totally clear. Okay, so the frame rate will not be affected. So to destroy it, we have to use this destroy function. Okay, and we know destroy function will take the game object you want to destroy as a first argument, and the second thing you can pass the specify if you want to delete it after some period of time, you can specify as a second argument. So firstly we have to pass the game object we want to destroy. So in our case this time basically the container. Okay, where we just put that block game object after spawning that block. Okay, so we need to delete this time comma, and the second thing we have to specify the time. Okay, so I want to delete this game object something like after 10 second or something like after 5 seconds. So let's do for 7 second. You can make a variable for it as well, public, and you can adjust or in the inspector. It's totally up to you. It will be great. Okay, if you make a variable, I'm gonna leave it as it is like this. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. So after instantiating or spawning that block game object, we storing that block game object into that temp container. Okay, and we also destroying that temp container after something like 7 seconds we assign it. Okay, but you can make a variable for it. It's totally up to you. Okay, so the game will be smooth. Okay, because it's not gonna hold too many game objects, and the hierarchy will be lot more cleaner. Okay, now if I hit this play button in the top and see the result, after 7 seconds all of the game objects will be destroyed from the game view. Okay, because we pass the specified the time as a second argument. Okay, so just see that, as you can see, we should able to see this game object will be destroyed after 7 seconds, I guess. As you can see right over here, the game object getting destroyed basically after 7 seconds. As you can see, the hierarchy also getting cleaner. Okay, spawning and getting destroyed by themselves. So I hope you get the idea how it works. So what we need to do, we need to slow down our time. When we collide with this block game object, we want to slow down our time, and we want a game over screen. Okay, and we also need to make the high score so player can see the progress, how many blocks the player has been passed through. Okay, something like when we collide with this ground, I just want to slow down our time and want a game over screen. Also we need to make our score. Okay, so basically we will deal with the score first, and then we will move to our slow down effect. Okay, that as well to keep track of the current score. So let's go to our project tab, then assets, right click, create C# script. Let's call it something like score manager or score management. It's totally up to you, and hit enter, double click that to open up in Visual Studio and create an empty game object, or you can add this script to any game object you like in the hierarchy. Okay, so double click that to open it up in Visual Studio. Okay, firstly what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a game object. So go over to hierarchy, right click, create empty game object. So I'm gonna name it as well I did for the script, which is a score manager. Okay, so right click on the transform and reset it. I'm gonna drag this game object in the top of my hierarchy so I can see all the time, and let's attach the score manager script right there underneath our score manager. Okay, firstly I need to open that up script in Visual Studio by double clicking on it. Okay, as you can see now, if I go back to our Unity, okay, it will compile for a second, and we need to attach our score manager script to any game object of score manager. Okay, so create a separate game object. It will be a lot better than just attaching that script to any game object in hierarchy. Okay, so select the score manager script, game object, and drag this script right there to add component section. Okay, so let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio. So what I want to do, I'm gonna leave this start and update function for now. I will use it for later. So let's make a variable which will keep track of the current score. Okay, how much score the player just made. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm gonna go to top of my class, and let's public. Okay, public, make it public. Okay, and that will be integer like whole numbers 1 2 3 4, and we have to name the variable. Let's call it current score. Okay, current score, and by default I'm gonna give 0. Why 0? And close that off with semicolon, because when the game start we're gonna have current score 0. So that is the reason of making current score or giving it by default a 0 value. Okay, so control S to save your code. But we need to increase this score. Okay, when we pass through those blocks. Okay, when we not hit and get passed through those blocks, we need to basically sorry, basically add to our current score by 1. Okay, so let's make a function for it to add that up. So let's go to bottom of our function. Let's make public. Okay, because I want to call this function from another class. Okay, so that is the reason of making this function public. And for function we have to type void, and let's call this function to something like add current score or add score. At current score would be fine, and make first bracket and some curly brackets. Okay, so what we want to do inside this function, we basically want to increase our current score by 1. Okay, so we will move to this current score variable. Okay, current score, and we will add plus equal 1. Basically plus equal 1 basically means we adding up, or you can leave it to plus plus, it also means the same thing, we just adding up. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. So if we call this function for the first time, current score by default we have given 0. So if we call this function now, so 0 plus 1 over here will be 1. And if we call this add current score function for the next time, okay, so 1 plus this current score 1, so 1 plus 1 will be 2. So this function just adding up our current score. So basically we need to call this function, but when we should when we spawning those blocks and when we pass through successfully, then we will call this function. Or else what we can do, we calling that spawn block function every after 2 seconds. So what I want to do, I also want to add our current score, wanna keep increasing by every after 2 seconds. Okay, so I want to call this function, this current score function every after 2 seconds. Okay, so control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity. But we also need to call this function, so we need to open up our spawner function. Okay, spawner function, sorry, we have to open up our spawner function. Sorry, spawner script, not function. We need to open that up. Okay, so as you can see, score manager by default we have given 0. As you can see, current score is 0. So let's go to let's open up our spawner script by double clicking on it. Okay, double clicking on it, and over here as you can see, every after 2 seconds we calling the spawn function. Okay, sorry, I'm just having the tea. So every after 2 seconds we calling this spawn function, and in spawn function we know it just spawning block from those 3 points. So we also want to do what we want to do, we want to keep increase our current score. So we want to call the function add current score function over here every after 2 seconds basically. Okay, so let's call it. To call it, use this statement. It's called find object of type. Okay, make sure you typing the same as I did over here, and into arrows you have to pass the script name. So in our case, this score manager we created. Okay, and in there we created this current score variable. So let's call this let's pass this function script name, and then we will access this current score, and we made the field public. So that is the reason of making that field public, because we want to access this variable or this function as well to that class. Okay, so that is the reason marking as a public variable and the function as well. So let's go to our spawner script one more time, and into arrows we have to pass the script name. So we will pass the score manager. Okay, score manager, and make these brackets and then dot, we can access the current score. As you can see, you can just add up to current score plus 1, but instead I will call this function which is add score. And we know what add score function is doing. It's basically adding 1 every single time when we call this add current score function, okay, to our current score. So close that, make first bracket and close that off with semicolon. Basically we calling this function. So firstly we finding object of our type which is our score manager, and then from there we calling this score add score function. And we know what add score function is doing. It's basically adding up score to our current score by 1. Okay, so control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now, and hit this play button in the top. So every after 2 seconds, this if I select this current score manager game object, in their current score will be add up by 1 every single time. Okay, basically every after 2 seconds the current score will be 1 by it will increase by 1. Okay, so as you can see, current score by default is 0. Now if I hit this play button and wait for a while, and like something like 4 seconds, so we're gonna have to score. So basically we every after 2 seconds we calling this add current score function, and it just adding up one score. So as you can see, every after 2 seconds this current score becomes 1. Okay, as you can see, every after 2 seconds this current score just keeps increasing. So what we want to do, instead of showing this current score over here, we want to show this up in the UI. So basically we need to make an UI element. Okay, basically we want to create a text, and over there we need to show this current score instead of just showing that up in our script. The player won't able to see the progress in the game. Okay, we developer we can, but we also need to show this up over here, so the player can see the progress, how much they scored in the game so far. Okay, so let's do that. To do it, we need to create the canvas first. Okay, because the text element over there is a UI element. Okay, so that's why we need to add up a text. Okay, text is a UI element. We need to add up the canvas first, and into canvas we have to place all the items like images, icons, buttons, UI instructions, all of them. Okay, goes into our canvas. So before we create the text, we need to create our canvas. Okay, sorry, I'm just having the tea. So let's go to hierarchy, right click, go to UI and select this canvas. Okay, and then select the canvas. I'm gonna drag this canvas in top of my hierarchy, and you can see by default event system gets add up. Okay, so select the canvas first and move over to inspector. In the bottom you can see canvas scaler. Over there UI scale mode selected constant pixel size. So what you need to do, select scale with screen size. Okay, and you can choose the resolution in the X and the Y as well. So I'm gonna do it 1920 by 1080 full HD. Okay, and now it's fine. So what we have to do now, so select the canvas and if to focus on it. So this is our canvas, and we need to place all of the UI elements right over here in our canvas. So right click on the canvas. Okay, right click on the canvas, then go to UI and select legacy, and then go in the bottom you can see text. Okay, so select that text, and what I want to do, I want to scale up this text. Okay, so scale this up and hold down all, so it will be scaled from the center. Okay, but we are not able to see the text. So select the text and go over to, firstly I'm gonna name this text to something like current score text. Okay, so let's name it to current score txt or text you can say. Okay, and let's go to font size, and let's make it a little bit bigger to able to see. Okay, so I'm gonna make it something like 100. So as you can see, now we are able to see, but I'm gonna choose a different color to make it more noticeable. something like I'm gonna go to color field and let's choose it white and choose alignment to both of the center. Okay, and font style to select bold, and you can drag any custom font. If you do have, you can drag that up over here, but I'm gonna go with a unity default one. So to new text I'm gonna set to 0. Okay, 0, so this will show up our current score. And what I want to do, I want to scale down a little bit, so hold down also, it will be scale from the center. Okay, scale down from the center. So I'm gonna drag this in the top, but instead of doing that, select the current score text game object and move to rect transform and click on over here and hold down alt on your keyboard. Okay, and select this top one. Now if I try to scale down my screen size or try to expand, as you can see, this text just always get in the top. Okay, it just stays right there even I'm trying to scale down or scale up my screen size, and it just resizing itself according to our screen size. So that is the cool thing about this. Select this top one. Okay, it will be always in the top even what aspect ratio you are working with. Okay, so basically we need to link this up current score to our current score variable. Okay, so I can change the value inside this text, something like 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, something like that, something like 10. Okay, basically we need to link this up with our current score. So basically we need a reference of this text element, and we will set this text element basically gonna link up to our current score variable as we created in our script. So let's do that. Okay, firstly we need a reference of this text. So let's go over to score manager script one more time, double clicking on it. Okay, and we will go to top of my class. Let's remove this two namespace in the top, we don't need it. Instead we will use using unity engine dot ui. Okay, dot ui. Why? Because that text is an UI element. Okay, the text over there is a UI element, so make sure you including this namespace. It's called using unity engine dot ui. Okay, make sure it. And we need a get reference of this text, basically this current text, this text field. So we need to create a text variable. Okay, game object component, text component. Okay, so make it public so we can see underneath of our script. Okay, that is a text element or component you can say, and we have to name it. Let's call it something like current score txt or text, and close that up with semicolon, and control S to save your code. And let's move to unity. So we would expect to see an empty field in our score manager says text, which we name it something like current score text. By default it will be empty. So what we need to drag this current score text right over there, so we will have the reference, basically the link, then we can set that up. Okay, so as you can see, score manager says none, which is empty. Okay, so let's drag this current score right over there. Now we have the link up of our basically this text. Okay, so let's go to script one more time, and we will move to this update function. And we know update functions calls every single frame, so that's why we need to update our text every single frame. Okay, so we will move to this current score text. Okay, current score text, then dot text. Basically what we doing over here, we going over to this current score text, then we accessing this text. As you can see, dot text basically means this text. Okay, and we will set equal to our current score. Okay, current score, and close that up with semicolon. But the thing is that this is an string and the current score over here is an integer value. As you can see, current score is an integer value, so we need to convert this integer value to a string. To convert this, we have to use dot to string. Okay, and make first bracket. So the current score for the first time we know we have given 0, so the current score over here will be 0. So the text over here, current score dot text, basically this text will be by default 0. And once this current score becomes 1, we know after 2 seconds this current score will be 1. Basically we adding up, okay, this became 1, so the current score dot text over here will be 1. Basically this text, because we directly setting it, as you can see, current score text dot text equal to our current score. Okay, so control is S on your keyboard, and let's move to Unity, and we're doing inside update function, and we know update function runs every single frame, so the text will be update in the UI every single frame. So that is the cool thing. Okay, so just I'm having the key. Isolate. Sorry. So just wait for to compile, and just wait. Now we have the link up. Now if I hit this play button now, we should would expect to see this text over here will be 1, then 2 every after 2 seconds, because we link it up. Okay, to our current this basically this variable, with this variable. So as you can see, current score becomes 2, then 3, then 4, and so on. Okay, so it just goes on. So I hope you get the idea how you can work with UI and link up to any variable you want. And the next thing we have to cover up this, when I hit this play button and we collide with that blocks game object, we need to slow down our time to make the game even cooler. Okay, basically we need to make, and also I'm gonna drag a custom font to make it a little bit pretty cool. I'm gonna do that. So as you can see, when we collide, we're not slowing down our time. Okay, so we also want to slow down our time, so it will be pretty cool effect. Okay, so I hope you get the basic idea how you can link up any text to your variable. Okay, or linking up. Okay, so we will slow down our time. Okay, when we collide with this game object, if I hit this play button and collide with the game object, I want to slow down our time like 10 times slower, you can say. It's totally up to you how much slow you want to make the game cooler. Okay, so just wait for to come the blocks from the top. Okay, as you can see, when we colliding, we not slowing down our time. Okay, so let's do that. So let's open up our script by quickly. Okay, where we colliding, we just want to slow down our time. So select the player game object. Okay, double click on your player script. You can make a separate script as well, and we will go to bottom, and we will use inbuilt function of Unity. It's called on collision inter 2D function. Okay, and that function get called when we collide with something. So just right after me, you have to type as the same I did over here. Okay, as you can see, void on collision inter 2D function. Okay, and this function get called when we collide with something, and we can extract info whatever we collided with by going to this other parameter. We can extract info like name, tag, components, any components we like to access. Okay, but what I want to do instead, I just want to check. Okay, if I select this block prefab game object by double clicking on it, so I want to assign this block game object as a block tag. So how you can do it? Okay, so select the game object first and go over to inspector in the top, and then you can see tag which says untag. So click on it, click on add tag, and hit this plus icon. Name the name or what you want. So name it something like block, and click on save. I already name it, so I'm gonna select that game object one more time, and let's go to inspector, and then which is says untag, let's assign it to block. Now we assigned this block game object as a block tag now. Okay, so what I want to do over here, firstly I want to check whatever I am just colliding with, if that game object has tag block, I want to slow down our time. Okay, and we know this function get called when we collide with something. Let's check over here. If okay, so make first bracket if other dot collider dot tag. Okay, if it's equals to block, and make for curly brackets. So firstly this function get triggered or get called when we collide with something, and over here we checking whatever we collided with, if that game object has block tag, and we know we assigned it that block game object as a block tag, so we definitely gonna collide with that game object. Okay, and what we doing, we just going over to other, then accessing the collider and the accessing the tag of that game object whatever we colliding with, and we checking if it's equals to block, if the tag is block. So what I want to do, I want to slow down our time. Firstly let's print out a message something like says slow down. Okay, so debug.log for printing out message. Okay, debug.log, let's call it slow down time. Okay, slow down time, and close that off with semicolon, control S to save your code. And this function get automatic call, you don't need to call it. Okay, this function get automatically get triggered when we collide with something. This is unity inbuilt function. Okay, so let's move to unity now and select the console in the bottom and hit this play button, and if we collide with those block game object which will come from the top, the message will be popped out in the console, says something like block. I guess what we doing, we just printing out the name, not block, we just printing out the message says slow down time, sorry, when we colliding with that game object. Okay, so just wait for to compiling it, and once it's done, okay, hit this play button. Firstly I'm gonna select the console in the bottom and hit this play button in the top, and let's collide with the block game object which will come from the top. The message should pop out says slow down time. Okay, just wait. So as you can see, slow down time message just getting popped up in the console whenever we collide with the block game object. So instead of printing out message, what we want to do, we want to slow down our time. Okay, so unplay this and double click that message to open it up in that script. Okay, as you can see. So let's remove this. Instead firstly let's make a function for it. Okay, so basically for 1 second I want to slow down our time. Okay, firstly if we collide, so we will slow down time, and after 1 second I want to set the time as normal. Okay, so basically we doing some certain thing after some period of time. Basically if you do want to do is some certain thing for some period of time, you should use I enumerator. Okay, that's pretty weird function, but we have to use it. But before you use that function, make sure you using this namespace in the top says using system.collection. If it's not, include it in your top of your class, then you gonna able to access that function. Okay, so the function we have to type I enumerator. It's little bit weird, but we have to do it. Okay, so this is I enumerator and we have to name the function. Okay, so let's call it something like slow down time. Okay, slow down time, make first bracket and some curly brackets. Okay, and over here we have to type yield. Okay, yield return new, wait for second. Okay, just right after me and you're gonna get hang of it. Yield return new after yield return new, wait for second, and into brackets we have to pass the time. After that amount of time we just wanna set back our time to normal. Okay, firstly I'm gonna make so something like 0.1 I will do. Basically if we slow down our time something like 10 times slower, so the 0.1 over here basically means 1 second. Okay, if we just slow down our time, in that situation this 0.1 basically means 1 second. Okay, so 0.1 f and close that off with semicolon. Okay, so so after this amount of time I want to set back time to normal. So before, what we want to do, we want to slow down our time. So we have to use this time scale. Time scale means the current time. Okay, and we will set to 1. Okay, 1f basically referencing the current time the game is running, the normal time you can say. So 1 basically referring the current time which is the normal time, and if you divide this time something like 10, okay, the time will be 10 times slower. Okay, so you can divide, so you have to use this forward slash and 10f. So instead of making this hard coding this, so let's make a variable for it, so we don't need to come to the script again and again to change this value. So let's go to top of our class and let's make a variable, public variable, okay, public float, and let's call it something like slowness, I guess, slowness. And by default I'm gonna set it to 10f, okay, and let's divide this 1f by slowness, and we know slowness by default we have set 10, okay. So basically we dividing our current time with 10, so the time which is our current time will be slower 10 time, okay. Basically we dividing our current time, this slowness is 10, so the current time will be 10 times slower, okay. So slowing down our current time also affect our delta time, okay, time dot delta time. Time dot delta time basically means the change in frame rate, you can say, as I explained before, okay. I hope you get the idea. So we also need to deal with that, okay. So we have to use, just right after me you're gonna get hang of it. So time dot fixed delta time, we have to set this, okay, time dot delta time, time dot delta time, and we have to divide this time dot delta time with this slowness as well, okay. So let's divide with slowness, just right after me. Basically after slowing our current time, which is the normal time, if we slow down this fixed delta time or the time delta time gets also affected. So we also need to divide that delta time with our slowness, okay. So and then after this amount of time, basically once again, as you can see, I want to set this time dot time scale as a normal time, okay. So let's set this up. So time dot time scale, I will set it to now 1f, and we know 1 is basically means the current time, okay, the game is running. So we setting back time dot time scale to 1, basically the current time so the time getting normal now, or something like slowing down 10 times slower, and then we setting back time to normal, okay. So we also need to set this time fixed or delta time as well to our normal. So we have to type this time dot fixed or delta time, and let's multiply this time dot delta time now whatever we divided with, okay. We divided with slowness, now let's multiply with this slowness, so it will get back, okay. So let's multiply this time dot delta time with our slowness, okay, and close that off with semicolon. So we need to call this function, okay, we need to call this slowdown function. So when we collide with those block game object which coming from the top, okay, so we want to call this function. So let's remove this message, instead let's call this slowdown time function, okay. But the problem is that you can call as a normal function, okay. Coroutine function is a little bit weird. I enumerator function, basically it's little bit weird. We need to call this function into start coroutine, okay, just right after me. So we have to type start coroutine, okay, start coroutine, I guess, coroutine, and into brackets you have to pass this whole statement, okay. So in start coroutine you have to pass the function name, which is in our case slow down time, okay. So you have to call with start coroutine, make sure it. So I'm gonna type one more time, start coroutine, okay, start coroutine, make first bracket, and in brackets we have to pass the function name, we have to feed the function name, which is in our case slow down time, make first bracket, and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code. And basically we calling this function when we colliding with that block game object. And firstly what we doing, we just slowing down our time 10 times slower. As a slowness we pass 10, basically means we're dividing our normal time with 10, so the time will be 10 times slower. And we also fixed delta time also get affected, so that's why we also dividing it. And after this amount of time, 0.1 second over here means 1 second, because we slow it our normal time 10 times slower, so that's why this 0.1 basically means 1 second. Okay, and then after 1 second we setting time to normal, as you can see, to 1 basically means the normal time, and we also setting back fixed delta time to 2 hour as a normal delta time. Okay, so control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity. Make sure you calling that function into start coroutine. I enumerator is little bit weird, but you have to admit it to get hang of it. Okay, so just wait for to compile. When we collide with those block m objects which will come from the top, we just slowing down our time 10. Okay, but you can adjust upon it. If I select the player game object, as you can see, slowness I pass 10. If I pass 5, so the time will be twice slower. Okay, twice slower. So it's totally up to you how much slow down you wanna slow down your time. I'm gonna just leave with 10. Okay, so now if I, sorry for the background noise. Okay, so now if I hit this play button and just get collide with those play block game object, the time will be slow 10 times slower. Okay, so just wait, just wait. So as you can see, time getting slow down. Okay, so I don't know why it's okay sometimes. Now if I collide one more time, as you can see, time getting slow down. Okay, as you can see. Okay, and after 1 second, time getting back to normal. So that's the cool thing, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea how it's working. Okay, how you can slow down anytime you can. Okay, so basically after slowing down time, we should game over the basically we should over the game. Okay, we should not spawn any more block game object from the top. If we collide with those block game object, means the game is totally over. The game is over. So let's create a script for that. Okay, and we will call it game manager, something like that. It will keep track the game is really active or not. If it's not, then we should not spawn any more block game object from the top. Okay, so let's do that. So let's create a script for that. Okay, so I'm gonna go to assets, right click, create C# script. Let's call it something like game manager. Okay, game manager, and hit enter. Double click that to open up in Visual Studio. Okay, so this script gonna be responsible for the game is really active or not. Okay, it will check. So let's create a game object as well for this game manager script. Okay, and attach this script to any game object you want in the hierarchy, but I'm gonna make a separate game object for this game manager to make it a more noticeable and to make it a lot more cleaner. Okay, so just wait for to compile, and when it's done, go to hierarchy, right click or hit this plus icon, and let's create an empty game object. Let's call this game manager as well as the script name. Okay, right click on the transform, reset it, and let's drag this game manager script to add component section. I'm gonna drag this game manager script top of my hierarchy, and let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio. Okay, so I'm gonna remove this start and an update function. Okay, we don't need this function, and also these two namespaces in the top. Okay, instead what I want to do, I want to create a bool parameter, and we know bool parameter can be true or false. Okay, and we will call it something like is game active. Okay, so let's create it and let's make it public because I want to access this variable from another class. So that's why that is a bool type variable which can be true or false. Let's call it is game active. Okay, is game active, and by default I'm gonna set it to true. Okay, by default I'm just setting to true. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. So in underneath our game manager script, we would expect to see an field says is game active, and by default it will be checked, basically means true. And when we collide with those block game object which will come from the top, we want to set this is game active parameter to unchecked, basically false. Okay, so by default we set it to true. Okay, but when we should this set this to false, when we collide with those block game object, means the game is no more active or the game is totally over. So let's open up our player game object one more time, where we colliding with. So over here, as you can see, we colliding with that block game object and we slowing down our time, and after 1 second we slowing just getting back time to normal. Okay, so after colliding this block game object, what we want to do, we want to set that parameter, which is game active parameter, to be false. Okay, so for we have to use this find object of type. Okay, and make for these arrows, and into arrows we have to pass the script name, and we know we made this game manager script, as you can see. So in game manager script we created this variable which says is game active. So let's access it. Okay, so let's go to player script one more time. So into arrows we have to pass the script name, which is game manager, and make this first bracket and dot dot, and in there we created that is game active parameter. So let's access it. So is game active. Okay, is game active. So I want to set this parameter to false. Okay, false. Now as sorry, I want to, so not a double equal, it should be one single one. Okay, so setting false. So basically we going over to this script. Okay, this script, and we setting this parameter is game active parameter to be false when we colliding with those game object. Okay, so I'm gonna go to player game object one more time, Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now and select this game manager's game object that will be unchecked, basically false when we collide with those game object. Okay, so just wait for to compile the game. Basically the script gonna be responsible the game is really active or not. Okay, we will check. So that's why we made this game manager script. Okay, now if I hit this play button, this will be unchecked when we collide with those block game object, which will come from the top. We be firstly slowing down our time, and after it we just setting that parameter to be false. This is game active parameter. Okay, so just wait. So as you can see, it gets unchecked, but the thing is that we never stopping spawning this block. Okay, so we also need to stop this spawning this block when this parameter is false. Firstly we will check is this is game active parameter is false, basically means the player game object collided with those block game object, basically means this is game active parameter is false, referring the game is over. Basically the player game object collided with those block game object. So in that situation what we want to do, we basically stop spawning. Okay, we're not gonna anymore gonna spawn. Okay, so let's open up our spawner script by double clicking on it. So very really sorry for sometime it gets pretty confused. Okay, I just confused. So over here, as you can see, if time between spawn is lesser than or equal to 0, we calling this spawn function, and then we just increasing our cannon score. So before we do all of these things, we will check. Okay, we will check. So we will go to top of our update function. Okay, before we do all of these things, because basically calling that spawn function with just spawning the blocks, so we will check if the game is really active or not. So we will check firstly. Okay, before we spawn we will check the game is really active or not. Okay, so let's check that. So over here we spawning. So let's go to top of our update function and let's check over here if, okay, if find object of type, and into arrows we have to pass the script name, which we know game manager. So let's pass it. Okay, and make these brackets and dot. We gonna access that is game active parameter. Okay, is game active, and is that parameter is game active parameter, if it's equals to false. Okay, if that is the case, and make some curly brackets, and we know we setting this is game active parameter when we collide with those block game object which coming from the top. Okay, we setting this is a game active parameter to false in player script, and over here we checking if find object of type. Basically we going over to game manager script and then accessing that is game active parameter, and we checking if that parameter is equals to false. If that is the case, what we want to do, we don't want to run this line of code, and we know this line of code is reason for spawning those block, okay, every after 2 seconds. So we just want to spawn if the game is really over. If the player just collide with those block game object, means the game is totally over. So we should not call this line of code. So we will type over here return. Okay, is the firstly we checking is game active parameter is false, means the game is over. Okay, and we typing return, and we know whatever you write after return, those line of code will not be executed. So this line of code will be stop calling, so it will stop calling this spawn function, as well as the score will stop increasing right after the game is over. Okay, as you can see, we type return, so whatever you write after return, it will not gonna call. Okay, so Control S on your keyboard, and let's move to Unity now. So when we colliding with those block game object, we setting is game active parameter to be false, and then we checking if the is game active parameter is false. Now in that situation, we just stop spawning, means we're not gonna able to see any block which come from the top, which will come from the top from those point. Okay, so just wait for to compile, and when it's done, hit this play button. Okay, hit this play button. Really sorry, hit this play button, and we should able to see when we collide with the first time from with block game object, the spawner function will stop spawning those blocks. So as you can see, slow it down time, and we cannot see any game object which is coming from the top now. Basically this spawner script gets stopped right there. This function gets stops calling right after the game is game active parameter became false, because we typing return, and we know after return whatever line of code you write, it will not be call out. Okay, so but the problem is we still can move left and right, so we also want to stop that. Okay, we don't want to move left and right. Okay, and we want a game over screen as well. So basically we firstly want to stop moving left and right, so we want to do that. So let's do it. Okay, so let's open up our script one more time by double clicking on it. Okay, and let's go to player script where we moving. So over here, as you can see, we moving movement is equal to input dot get axis, and we changing our position, or what we doing with our keyboards according to our keywords. Okay, basically key. Okay, so before we move, firstly we will check if the game is really active or not. Okay, so let's check that. So let's take it over here. If so, let's do the same thing. Firstly we will find the object which is game manager. So let's pass it, and let's access the is game active parameter. Okay, is game active parameter, and let's check it if it's equals to false. So if means the game is over. So let's type return, and we know after return whatever you write, those line of code will not be executed, means we cannot move left and right if the game is over. Okay, even if we try to hold down A or D key too much. Okay, so Control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity now and hit this play button in the top. So we'll firstly stop spawning, and then we just stop moving left and right. Okay, left and right, and we also need a game over screen. Okay, now if I hit this play button in the top and see the result, what's really happening after the game gets over. Okay, the player will stop move, gonna move left and right after the after colliding with this block game object. As you can see, the game gets over now. time gets slow. Now if I'm just trying to holding down A or D key on my keyboard, but the player, as you can see, just not moving according to our needs. Okay, if we just holding down, it should move right to the right side. As you can see, it's not moving. Basically we checking the game is over now because we collided with that block game object. We setting that is game active parameter is false, and we checking everywhere if that is game active parameter is false. If that is the situation, then whatever we doing after that, we're not gonna do that. Okay, so that's why we're not able to move left and right. So we need a game over screen now. Okay, so the player can play the game one more time and play it nicely. Okay, so I'm gonna unplay this now. Okay, so I hope you get the idea how it works. Okay. Okay, so what we will do, we will make a game over screen. Okay, if I hit this play button in the top, when we collide with the game object, we need a game over screen. Okay, so the player can play the game one more time and go back to menu scene. We will create that later as well, don't worry. Okay, so just wait for to come our block. So as you can see, we need a game over screen now because the game is over. We collided with the block game object. Okay, so firstly you need to make the canvas. If you haven't created the canvas, go over to hierarchy, right click, then go to UI and select this canvas. Okay, and select the canvas, go to inspector, and there canvas scaler, choose a UI scale mode to constant pixel size to scale with the screen size, and choose the resolution in the X 1920 and in the Y 1080. Okay, so now it's done correctly. So once you done totally, right click on the canvas, then go over to UI and select this panel. Okay, and you can resize this panel as you wish. So I'm gonna leave it like this. Okay, so select I'm gonna name this panel to something like game over panel. Okay, game over panel, and go over to image component. Then let's choose a darkish color, something like this. I guess this would be pretty fine. Seems like game is really over. Okay, so right click on this game over panel, and then we will create two button, one for retrying our game scene one more time, and one for going back to our menu scene. So let's create that. To create a button, right click on game over panel, then go to UI, and then go to legacy and then button. Okay, and scale this button and hold down all on your keyboard to scale it up from the center, as you can see. Okay, and let's call this button something like a retry button. A retry button. Okay, retry button, and let's scale up the text inside of that button. Okay, so click on that arrow, select the text and go to font style. Okay, in the text, and let's make it something like 70. Okay, 75 I would be fine, I guess, and select font style to bold. Okay, and let's change the text inside of it. It says button. Okay, so let's call it something like retry. And for this I'm gonna scale down the button a little bit. So hold down Alt on your keyboard to scale it down or scale it up. So I'm gonna drag this over here. Let's create one more button for going back to menu scene. Okay, this will be, if we click on this retry button, we will reload the game scene one more time, or the level scene you can call. And let's create a menu button as well. So select the button. Okay, hold button and Control D for duplicate, and let's bring it down, and let's call this button to something like menu button. Okay, so let's call it menu button. Okay, menu button, and let's change the text inside of it as well. Select the button and let's go to text inside of that button, and choose retry to something like menu. Okay, menu, and now we have two buttons, one for our retry and one for our menu. Okay, but we also need one more thing, that is high score text. Okay, basically we want to show up how much score the player made so far. Okay, we want to show that up, so let's create a text for as well for that high score text. Okay, but before it we also will make a game over text, so we can know the game is really over or not. Okay, so right click on this game over panel and then go to UI and select this, go to bottom legacy and select this text. Okay, and let's scale this text, hold down alt to scale it up from center, and let's increase the font style, select the text and let's scale this up something like 60. We're not able to see it but because of the color of the text. Okay, so let's select the text and go over to color fill and let's choose it something like white. Now we are able to see it, so I'm gonna drag this text over here something like over here. Okay, and let's call this text to something like game over text. Okay, game over text, and let's change the text inside of this something like new text to game over. Okay, so let's call it game over so the player know game over, and let's choose alignment to both of the center. Okay, I'm gonna scale it down, hold down alt to scale it down from center. Let's drag it up here. I'm gonna select the retry button and menu button. I'm gonna drag them a little bit to the bottom side so we can have a little more space for our high score. Okay, so let's select this game over text and go over to font style and choose bold. Okay, to make it more visible, let's scale it up the text a little bit, 70. Okay, and let's duplicate this game over text for our high score to show up the player, how much score the player made so far. Okay, so player can see the player progress. Okay, so let's duplicate this button, control D for duplicate, and let's bring it down to the bottom side, and let's call this game over text to instead high score text. Okay, I score text, and what we want to do, so let's change the text inside of it. Let's set it to 0 because we know when the game start player gonna have 0 score. Okay, so that's why by default I'm just setting a 0. Okay, so as you can see, I guess the button we did kind of, okay, so now, okay, now it's fine. Okay, so now this is our game over panel. So make it prefab, make sure you making it prefab or else you have to work from scratch. Okay, so select the game object and let's drag it to prefab folder. Create a prefab folder, script folder to make it, and drag all of the scripts into script folder and drag all of the prefab to prefab folder to make it a little more cleaner. Okay, so now what I want to do, I want to set this to inactive by default, as you can see. So I just selected the game object and moved to inspector. I'm just setting to active or deactive depending upon the game. Okay, by default I'm going to set it to false, basically unchecked or untrue you can say. Okay, so when the player game object collide with those block game object, then I want to set this game over panel to be active or check this one. So basically we need a reference of this whole game object, then we can set this to active, deactive depending upon the game is really over or not. Okay, so so let's open up our player script one more time by double clicking on it. Okay, so where we colliding with, so as you can see, well, when we collide with this block game object, firstly we slowing down our time, as you can see, firstly slowing down our time, and after 1 second we setting back our time to normal. Okay, firstly we slowing down our time 10 times slower, and then we setting our time to normal. Okay, and after doing all of these things, what I want to do, I want to set that game over panel to be active. Okay, firstly we need a reference of that game object. So let's go to top of our class and let's make a public game object field for that game over panel game object. Okay, so let's make a public game object. Okay, game object, let's call it game over panel. Okay, game over panel, and close that up with semicolon, and let's go to now and make sure you drag the game over panel to game over panel slot. Okay, but before it, as you can see, when we collide with the block game object, firstly we calling this function, and what this function is doing, firstly slowing down our time, and after this amount of time we setting back our time to normal. So and after doing all of these things, setting back our time to normal, I also do want to set that game over panel to be active because we collided with the block game object. So that's why we slowing down our time, and after 1 second we setting time to normal. Okay, so let's set that game over panel. Okay, so let's go to game over panel, and we have to use this function. It's called dot set active. Okay, and into brackets we have to pass the value. So in this case we will pass true. True basically means checked, basically that game over panel will be active, and if we pass false it will be deactive. Okay, so in this case we will pass true, means we setting active. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. So we would expect to see an empty field in underneath of our player script. Okay, it says game over panel, and by default that will be empty. So what we need to drag this game over panel right there, so we will have the reference or the game object. So the else it will throw us an error because we going to that game object and we setting it to active. Okay, so as you can see, a game over panel which says none, which is empty. So let's drag the game over panel right there. Now we have the reference of it. Now if I hit this play button and the game gets over, firstly we slowing down our time, and when the time gets to normal, we setting that game over panel to be active. Okay, so just wait to blocks comes in. Okay, so as you can see, after 1 second we just get a redirect to this scene. It says game over, and we have retry button and menu button, but the thing is that this button does nothing currently. Okay, if we click on this retry button we should reload our game, and if we click on this menu button we should reload our menu scene. Okay, so if I go to game over panel, basically this panel, okay, and select this retry button and go to inspector, scroll down to the bottom side, as you can see it says on click, and it says list is empty. So we need a drag a script. Okay, and we can call it something like scene management, and that script will be responsible for loading up any scene we want. Okay, so we will create a separate script, something like scene management or scene manager you can call, and we will hook we will create inside that script some certain function. For retry button, we will create retry function, and retry, inside of that retry function we want to reload our game scene. Okay, this game scene we are currently in now. Okay, so we need to drag the function over here or the script over here, and we need to choose the function. Okay, so basically on click event, so that is the thing. Okay, so I'm gonna unplay this. So let's create a separate script for that. So go over to script folder, on assets, right click, create C# script, name it to scene management. I already created. Okay, so let's make a game make a scene management script, or you can hook this script to any game object you like in the hierarchy. I'm gonna create a separate game object for this script. So let's right click on hierarchy or hit this plus icon, create empty game object. Let's call it scene management as well as the script name. Okay, and go to transform, right click and reset the transform, and drag this script to add component section, and I'm gonna drag this game object in top of my hierarchy so I can see all the time. Okay, and let's double click this to open it up in Visual Studio. And what I want to do, I don't need this start and update function. Let's remove this, and also this two namespace. Okay, instead we will use this using Unity engine. Okay, Unity engine dot scene management. Okay, scene management. This you need to include this namespace if you want to dealing with any scenes like loading up scenes, reloading scenes, anything like that. You need to include this namespace in top of your class. Make sure it. Okay, using Unity engine dot scene management. So let's make two function and let's make them public, because we want to call those function from over here. If I select this game over panel and then retry button, so I want to call call this function in the button function, okay, on click event over here. So that's why we need to make all of this function public. Okay, so let's make a public void for function, and let's call it something like retry, and make first bracket and some curly brackets. So what we want to do inside this function, we want to load up the current scene, basically this game scene one more time. So how we need to use this scene manager for it. Okay, scene manager dot load scene, load scene, and brackets, in brackets we have to pass the build index or the name of the scene. Okay, so make sure you using this namespace, else you not gonna able to use this scene manager dot load function, and this function will load up the scene we want to load up. Okay, so to see the build index of the scene or the name of the scene, what you need to do, move over to Unity, and in the top left file, okay, go to file and then build settings, or control shift plus B shortcut key, and as you can see over here we have scenes in build and the index. Okay, as you can see sample scene. Okay, the build index in you can see in the right side which says 0. Okay, so you can pass this index or the name of the scene which is sample scene, as you can see over here. So okay, so what I'm gonna do instead, I will use this function. Okay, scene manager, scene manager dot get active scene dot build index. So what does it means? It's basically means we getting the build index of the current scene. Okay, so as you can see, scene manager dot get active scene dot build index, basically whatever scene we are in or whatever level we are in, the build index of it, as you can see dot build index. So we are currently in now this sample scene, and we can see the build index of it over here in the right section says 0. Okay, so the build index over here will be 0. So we need to pass the index. Okay, index or the scene name in quotation. So we using this scene manager dot get active scene dot build index, basically means whatever scene we currently in, the build index of it. Okay, so in this case it will be 0. So basically we just loading up the sample scene one more time. Okay, when we click on that retry button and close that up with semicolon, control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. Okay, and make sure you make also prefab of this scene management game object as well, because I want to get this script into menu scene as well, because we will create menu scene. Okay, and we know we will create 2 button, play button, exit button for playing scene. So we need to load up this sample scene, so that's why we need this script as well right there. Okay, so if I select this scene management script, okay, select this retry button of that game over panel and scroll to the bottom side says on click. So hit this plus icon, and we need to drag the game object in which game object the script is sitting on. So as we know in scene management, so let's drag there, and in scene, so we will move to scene management script, and over there we created that retry function as you seen. So let's choose that retry, okay, for this retry button. And now if I hit this play button, this play button, and try to click on that retry button, we will reload our game scene one more time. Okay, because over here we pass the build index. Okay, so the build index over here will be 0. So basically which scene we currently in, we just loading that up one more time when we click on that retry button. Okay, so now if I click this retry button, as you can see we're loading up the menu scene. Okay, so one more time, so let's click on this retry, as you can see, and we also need to hook this menu button with a menu function. So let's create a menu function as well. So let's go to bottom and let's make it public as well for void, and let's call this one menu, make first bracket and some curly brackets. So what we want to do inside that, we want to load up menu scene, but we haven't created a new menu scene or menu level, you can say, yet. So for now what we will do, let's print out a message says something like menu. We will create that later, that menu scene. Okay, So let's print out. For printing out, we have to type void debug.log, and in quotation you can type whatever you want to say. So let's call it menu. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity, and let's hook this menu button with menu function. And we know what we doing inside that menu button. We just printing out the menu name in the console says menu. Okay, just printing out the message. Firstly, we need to hook that menu function with this menu button. So let's do that. So select this menu button, go over to inspector one more time, scroll to the bottom side and hit this plus icon, and we need to drag the game object, in which game object the script is setting on. So in our case, scene management. So let's drag there, and we need to go over to scene management script, and over there we created this menu function, as you can see. So let's choose that, and now if I select this console in the bottom side and hit this play button, and when I try to click on that menu button, goes to click on menu button, we will see the message. We would expect to see the message says menu will be popped out right away when we try to click menu. Okay, so as you can see, if I try to click on this menu in the console menu, message just getting popped up multiple times whenever I try to click on this menu button. So instead of showing up the message over here, we want to load up menu scene, but we need to create that first. But before it, we will deal with this high score. Okay, so the player can see the player progress, and how much player made so far. Okay, so player can see the progress. Okay, so we will deal with this first, and then we will create the menu scene. I hope you get the basics idea of it. Okay, so I'm gonna play this now. Okay, so what we need to set up the player high score. Okay, we want to see set a high score. If this current score becomes larger than our high score, so we want to set this current score as a new high score. So if I hit this play button now, we have the high score text as you seen we created. So we will make a basically we will use inbuilt function or a system of Unity saving single piece of data. Okay, so we want to set this current score, as you can see it's 1. If you take a closer look, okay, it's 1, as you can see over here. So we want to set this 1 as a new high score over here. So to save our high score, I'm gonna use the player preps, that is inbuilt system of Unity to saving single piece of data. It can be strings like names, integer values like whole numbers like 0 1 2 3 4, or float values like 0 0.5 0 0.4. You can save a single piece of data into that player preps. Okay, so I'm gonna explain. So let's open up our script one more time. So I will open up this score management script. Okay, I will do inside score management script. You can create a separate script for that as well, something like high score management or high score manager. It's totally up to you. I'm just gonna do with this score management script. Okay, score manager, as you can see over here. I'm so really sorry, I have selected the wrong one, which is the scene management. So in the bottom I have score manager, so I'm gonna do inside of that. So let's double click that up, okay, to open it up in Visual Studio. As you can see, we have our current score, which is by default is 0, and we have the current score text. Okay, so what we want to do over here, firstly I want to basically we need a reference of this text. If I go to move to canvas, then set this game over panel to be active, as you can see we have the text over here, which is the game high score text. So we need a reference of this text, then we can set the value there. Okay, so let's hook the reference first. Okay, so let's open up our script one more time, and let's make a public text, okay, text field, that is high score text, as you seen. Okay, high score text, and close that up with semicolon. Make sure you using this using Unity engine dot namespace, else you not gonna able to get this component which is the text over here. Okay, make sure it, and control s to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. So in our score manager script we would expect to see an empty field of says high score text. Okay, and that by default will be empty. So what we need to drag this high score right there, so we will have the reference, and we can set this high score text to any value we like this current score. If the current score becomes larger, we will set that current score as a new high score. Okay, so if I select the score manager script, as you can see high score text, it says none, which is empty. So let's drag this high score text right there. Now we have the link up of this high score text. I'm gonna set this game over panel to inactive by default. Okay, so let's open up our script now. So we will move to this start function. Okay, to save a single piece of data, we know when the player open up the game for the first time, we definitely know player not gonna have any score, player gonna have zero score. Okay, when the player or open up the mobile or this game application for the first time, okay, the user will have zero score. Okay, so that's why we will use this. It's called player preps. Okay, player preps dot get in. Okay, get in we will use integer, basically 0 1 2 3 4. You can save any data you like strings, so you can set like get string. So we getting the value. We know when player open up the game for the really first time, player gonna have zero score. So that's why we're getting the value firstly. Okay, so we have to use this player preps dot get in. Okay, and make first bracket. So we have to save or get the value into a key, and we have to save later on the value we want to set our current score, which we know as a new high score. Okay, we want to set that up, so we need to set in a key. Okay, so in quotation you have to type, I'm gonna call it something like high score, and I'm gonna make it all of these letters capitalized. Okay, and close the and comma, you have to pass a default value. We know when the player open up the game for the first time, it's gonna have zero score, so by default that's why I'm gonna pass 0. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. So we will set this default value, which is our will be this high score when the player open up for the first time. We will set this one, we will store this value, this will be 0, we know. Okay, we getting the value, so let's store this into this high score text. So let's go over to this high score. Okay, high score text, then dot text, and we will set equal to this. But over here high score text dot text is a string value, and over here this player preps dot get in is a integer value. So we need to convert this integer value to a string. To convert this, we just have to type dot to string. Okay, dot to string. Now it will convert this integer value to a string now. Okay, so this will be by default 0, we getting the 0. So the high score text dot text over here will be 0. Basically what we doing, we going over to this game over panel. If I set this one to active, we going over to this text and then accessing this text, and we setting this text equal to player preps dot get in high score, and we getting the value in this high score, and we need to save the current score to this high score key. Okay, make sure it. So control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. And if I just if I just the game gets over, this high score by default will be 0. Or if the player open up the game for the first time, this high score text will be 0. Okay, so now I'm gonna set this one game over panel to inactive. Okay, now if I hit this play button and play around and collide with those block game object and make them high score, it will not be saved because we have to set that this current score as a new high score. So we have to use another function for it. I will get into that as well. Okay, as you can see, I don't know, by default we have given 2, which it shouldn't be 2. Okay, high score text dot text. Okay, so if I select this high score, so control S on your keyboard to save your code. I guess we forgot to do it. So if I select this text, okay, so we have done some mistake. If I go to this text, okay, this text is fine. So if I select this score manager, high score text, okay, so let's try there. So I'm gonna set this one to active now. Okay, and if I hit this play button, just get we should able to see that high score text in the start of the game will be 0. Okay, but if it's not, let's get it. I'm gonna explain. Okay, still I'm gonna explain. Okay, so as you can see, I don't know why it's 2, but what we will do, we will set this 1 as a new high score. I'm gonna get rid of this. Okay, so basically we need to set this current score, whatever we makes, if it's become to that high score as you seen. Okay, by default it will be 0 when the player open up for the first time and play around. Definitely player gonna make 1 score or 2 score, so we want to set that 1 or 2 score as a new high score. To set that up, we need to move over to this update function. So let's go over to that. Okay, so let's go over to that. Sorry, my mom just brings up tea over here. Okay, so what we will do, over here we will check. Okay, firstly we will check if the our high score, if the current score is really greater than our high score, then we will set, else we will do or not gonna set that. Okay, something like our high score is 2, something like 2, and we make the current score, basically this current score over here 1. Okay, so we're not gonna set this one as a new high score because it's lesser. Okay, we want to set a bigger number, so something like we make current score 3. Okay, and our high score is 2, so we want to set this our current score as a new high score. Why? This 3 is greater than our high score. Okay, so that's why. So before we save, we will check. Okay, we will check. So we will check over here if current score. Okay, current score, basically this this current score. Okay, if that current score is really greater than clear prep, so we have to get the value first. Okay, whatever we saved, we have to get the value first. So player preps dot get int we have to use. Okay, get in, sorry, dot get in, and in brackets we have to pass the key code in okay, key code, a string key, basically in which key we set that or get that value. So we have to pass the same name as I did over here. Okay, so let's do it high score. Okay, high score, and we have to pass the default value, which is 0, we know. Okay, for the first time, and make these curly brackets now. Okay, so so as you can see, if the current score is really greater than our previous score, the high score. Okay, the high score, if that is the situation, means the current this current score is greater than, so we want to save this current score as a new high score. Okay, to save this that current score as a new high score, we have to use this clear preps. It's called clear preps dot set in. Okay, set in function we have to use, and we have to save the value in the key in which we get the default value, so which we know high score. Okay, so let's pass it in quotation, we have to do it. Okay, which is high score, and we want to set this current score now. So this current score, so let's suppose this current score becomes something like 3. Okay, so we want to set this 3 as a new high score, so we will pass over here current score, which is we assume it 3. Okay, this over here is 3, we just assume it can be anything like that. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. But we also need to update this text. Okay, if I move to Unity and select this game over panel, set this active, so we also need to update that high score over here in this text. So in the next time, what we will do, we will go over to that high score text. Okay, high score text dot text, and we will set this to our current score. And we know current score, firstly we saved into this key high score. As you can see, firstly we save it this current score to this high score key. Okay, and then we just going over to this high score text, basically this high score text, and we setting equal to current score, which is we saved as a new high score. Okay, and but as you can see, this is an integer value, but we do know this is a string value. This high score text dot text is a string value, and this over here is an integer value. So we need to convert this integer value to a string. To convert this, we have to type dot to string. Okay, so make first bracket and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code. So we only doing all of these things if the current score really greater than our previous score. Then we doing all of these things, else we not doing like that. Okay, so Control S on your keyboard to save your code now, and let's move to Unity. And by default set this game over panel to be active. When the game gets over, we will set this one to be active, and honestly we will see the high score, which will be whatever we gonna make, how much player just make right after the game gets over. So by default I'm gonna set this game over panel to be inactive or deactive. Now if I hit this play button and play around, sorry, I'm just having the tea. Okay, so we should able to see now. So as you can see, this should be our new high score. I don't know, but okay, so firstly what we will do, let's if you want to delete that saved data, let's suppose if you want to delete that saved data, so what we need, we have to use another, okay, another thing. So let's do inside that update function. Okay, in update function, let's check for, I'm gonna test for any key like that. So I'm gonna check for T key. If I press down my T key on my keyboard, I want to delete that saved data, which is I saved as a new high score. Okay, I just want to delete that. To delete it, we have to firstly I'm gonna check for if input dot get key, and I'm gonna pass the key code. Okay, key code dot T. Okay, T, and make these curly brackets. So if I just press down on my keyboard T key, I want to delete this saved data, whatever I saved like 1 2 3 4 as a high score, I want to totally delete that. To delete that, we have to use this player preps. Okay, player preps dot dot delete. Okay, delete all. So you can delete all of the time, something like if you saved as a single piece of data string, it will be also delete all of the key, okay, at a one time. But if you do want to delete is some certain key, so you have to use the second, which call delete key, and you have to pass the key code, okay, which we are saved in. Okay, so we know in high score we saved in, so let's pass it and close that off with semicolon. And we also need to update that. We deleted the high score totally, and we also need to update this text, which is the high score. As you seen, it was over here, so we also need to update that to as a 0. So I'm gonna go over to that high score one more time. High score dot text equal to, I'm going to set equal to 0 in quotation, okay, and end up with semicolon. So basically I am just setting to 0. Okay, so Control S on your keyboard to save your code. Now if I head back to Unity and play the game, you can delete the key as well. You can delete all the key at the same time. If you use delete all key, it will delete all of the key if you have used to save a single piece of data. Okay, this is not a pretty good way to save player progress data or something like that, and it just only just saving one single piece of data. So that why is the drawback right there, saving any data in player preps. So later on we will use XML or JSON file to save or binary formats. Okay, we will do, but we will do in future tutorial. Okay, we will do that in future tutorial. So now if I hit this play button in the top, and if I press down on my keyboard T key, the player, whatever I saved as a new high score, it will be deleted right away. Okay, so just wait, and the game gets over. Okay, now game gets over. Now if I press down T key, as you can see, it's not updating anyway. Now if I hit this play button, okay, one more time, you can able to see the high score will be 1. Okay, we deleted that 2, whatever we saved as a 0. Okay, we set to 0, but we definitely gonna make by default 1 score. So this current score will be saved as a new high score. Okay, I don't know really what is really happening. Okay, so this our current score, which is 1. Okay, if I click on this retry button, okay, retry button, and make a little bit higher score, something like 2, as you can see, this current score 2 gets saved as a new high score. Now if I make it a current score a little bit higher, larger, that will be saved as a new high score. Okay, so if I click on this retry button one more time and pass through some blocks, okay, sorry, I'm gonna make the movement a little bit fast of player so the player can easily pass through those blocks. So I'm gonna make the speed something like 15, and let's hit this play button in the top. Okay, just play around with and you're gonna get hang of it. Okay, just hold down, and if I press, as you can see, I can move fast enough, and just okay, one. Oh, so I'm gonna make the movement of the player a little bit more, something like 24, I guess. And now if I hit this play button one more time, we should able to see our player game object will be so much fast, and I'm gonna go to the left and right totally speed. Okay, so just wait and see. As you can see, it's going a lot faster, so we can pass through our blocks. So this 4, I guess, should be as a new high score, this 5. So as you can see, this 5 gets saved as a new high score because we only checking for a larger number. Okay, now if I click on this retry button and make just one score, that will not be saved because that is lesser than our this high score. So that's why we not saving this current score as a new high score. We doing only, as you can see over here, we checking if the current score is really greater than the previous score, then we saving it, else we not doing anything like that. Okay, and you can delete the data by pressing down T, or you can check for any key you like. Okay, so I'm gonna unplay this. So I hope you get the idea how you can save a single piece of data in Unity by using player preps. You can save names, strings, and basically strings, integer values, doubles, floats, anything like that, single piece of data only. Okay, if you just want to jump into a like inventory system, if you wanna save lot of crate system or something like inventory, that then you should not use these player frames, and it's not a great deal to do it. So you need to use XML or JSON file or binary formats, but we will make a separate video on that, how you can save player data nicely and safely. Okay, in future tutorial we will do it. I hope you get the idea how you can save single piece of data in Unity. Okay, in this tutorial, or in this video you can say, or in this whole tutorial or complete tutorial. Okay. Okay, so when I goes to hit this play button and the game gets over and try to click on this menu button, we're not loading up our menu scene. We need to load that up. Okay, so just wait, and just wait for to play the game. Okay, and let's make the game over. So if I just collide with this block game object, as you can see, if I click on this menu button, we're not loading up our menu scene. Instead, in the console, we're printing out menu message, as you can see. If I clear it now and click on this menu, as you can see, so instead of printing out message, we need to load up our menu scene. Before it, we need to create that menu scene. Okay, to create that up, so I'm gonna unplay this. So go to project tab first, then assets, then scenes, right click on scenes. Okay, then go to create and select this scene. Okay, select the scene, and you have to name the scene. I'm gonna name it as like menu. Okay, so hit enter, and let's double click that to open that up scene. Okay, so as you can see, we have the main camera. If I select the main camera from hierarchy and F2 focus on it, as you can see, we just have only main camera, and I want to change the color of the main camera as the game like red. Okay, so select the main camera, go over to background, and I'm gonna choose something like red, kind of this. Okay, and let's go to so we will create two things. Okay, two buttons basically, one to play our game and one for exit out our application or quitting our application. Okay, Before it, we need to create the canvas. We know into canvas we have to place all of the UI elements like buttons, images, icons, just goes right into our canvas. So we need to create the canvas first. Okay, so to create the canvas, go to hierarchy, right click, then UI, and then select this canvas. Okay, and select the canvas. If to focus on it, go over to inspector and then canvas scaler, select UI scale mode to scale with screen size and choose the resolution in the X 1920, in the Y 1080. Okay, 1080. Now it's fine. So into this canvas we will create two buttons, play button and one our exit button. Okay, so right click on this canvas, then go to UI and I'll go to legacy and then text. Okay, and then text, and scale this up text. So hold down alt on your keyboard to scale it up from center like this. Okay, and what I want to do over here, let's make the font size inside of that text. Sorry, we should not create the text, instead we need to create the button. Okay, so right click on the canvas, then go to UI, then legacy in the bottom and select this button. Okay, and let's scale this button. Hold down alt on your keyboard to scale it up from center like this. Okay, and let's scale it the scale up the font size inside that button. Okay, so select that button. Firstly, I'm gonna rename this button to as a play button. Okay, rename this button to as a play button. Let's go inside of that text and let's scale it up. So I'm gonna scale it up to something like 80. Okay, and choose font style to bold. Okay, and I want to replace this button text instead of play. Okay, instead of play, and let's select this button one more time and hold down alt on your keyboard to resize it from center like this. Okay, so I'm gonna drag this button a little bit up, or what you can do, go to inspector, then rect transform, then click on this and hold down alt on your keyboard. Now it will be always gonna stay in the top. Okay, even I try to resize my screen, as you can see it's just staying in the top side. Okay, top side, as you can see. So I'm gonna drag this button a little bit down. Okay, a little bit down, something like over here. So this is our play button. So let's create one more button to exit out our application. That will be exit button, we know. So let's duplicate this button by Control D and let's call this button to exit button. Okay, exit button, and let's drag this up down. So this button, okay, so let's replace the text inside of that button. Instead of play, let's call it quit or exit. I'm gonna say something like exit. Okay, and for this button, go to rect transform one more time and hold down all. For this button, select this bottom one and drag this up over here. Now we created two button. One is a play button. If we click on this play button, we should play our game, and if we click on this exit button, we should exit out our application. Okay, so we need the scene management script. You can create a separate script, but we do know we created prefab game object of that scene management script, so I'm gonna use that script. Okay, so you can attach that script to any game object of your hierarchy, but we made that prefab as you seen. So I guess we haven't created that prefab. So let's go to sample scene by double clicking on it. Okay, and click on save whatever you have done to your menu scene. Okay, click on save it. So it will be saved. As you can see, scene management. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make it prefab. Okay, and you know what prefab is basically means. So I'm gonna select that game object and let's drag it to prefab folder. Now if I'm gonna move to menu scene one more time by double clicking on it, and let's click on save to save whatever you have done. Okay, and let's drag this scene management script to hierarchy now. Okay, like this. So in let's open up this scene management script by double clicking on it. As you can see, okay, we created two buttons, one for retrying our scene, okay, and one for menu, as you can see, and one we will create for this play button. Okay, if we click on this play button, we should play our game. So we will make a play function as well as an exit function. Okay, so firstly let's move over to that menu scene, sorry, that sample scene or the game scene you can call. So let's double click that to and click on save whatever you have done. Okay, and I'm gonna open up the scene management script. Okay, so then let's double click that to open it up. before it, make sure go to top left, firstly move over to Unity and go to top left file, okay, file, then click on build settings or control shift plus B, shortcut key for it, okay, and you have to drag the scene right over here. I'm gonna delete this one, okay. So I have the scene over here menu, as you can see in assets. So we need to drag this menu right over here. Make sure you do that, as well, else you're not gonna able to go to this scene, okay. If we click on that menu button, okay, make sure it, so select that scene and drag it to this scenes in build, and I'm gonna drag this menu in top because I do want this menu scene as a default. When the player open up, it should redirect to menu scene instead of directly playing the game or the game scene, okay. So that's why I'm gonna drag this up, okay, and drag the sample scene down. So I'm gonna drag this up, and you can see the scene name in the left side and the build index of it to the right side. As you can see, the build index is 0, okay. So you can pass the build index or the name of the scene if you can, okay. So let's open up our script. So let's open that up. So after printing out message, I want to load up that menu scene we created, okay, and we drag it in scenes in build field, as you seen. So we have to use this function over here. It's called scene manager dot load scene, we know, and in brackets we have to pass the scene name or the build index of it. So in quotation you can pass the scene name, which is menu, and make sure you type spelling correctly, else it will not work. Or what you can do, you can pass the build index, which is 0. So I'm gonna do this in quotation. We have to type the name of the scene and close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. And if I hit this play button and the game gets over and try to click on that menu button, we should redirect to that menu scene. In menu scene we created two buttons, play button and the exit button, as you seen, okay. We also need to deal with those buttons. If we click on that menu place button, we should play our game. Basically we need to load up this sample scene or the game scene, you can call. And if we click on that exit button, we need to exit out our application, okay. So now if I hit this play button in the top, okay, if I hit this play button in the top and just wait, okay, just wait to come. So now as you can see, the game gets over, and if I click on this menu button, we should able to get that scene, or should go to that menu scene, okay. Let's do that. So clicking this message, as you can see, we get redirect to our menu scene. Firstly we printed out the message which is menu, and after that we loading up that scene, okay, as you can see we did. So let's deal with now this play button and the exit button, okay. So let's go to menu scene now, okay. So go to project tab, then scenes, and double click that to open up that scene, okay. This is our menu scene, and we drag it the scene management game object over here. Or what you else you can do, you can attach that scene management script to any game object you want, or you can create a separate script as well if you do want. I just want to do inside of this scene management script, so that's why I made it prefab, so I can drag that game object or the script to any scene I want, okay, and I can change. So let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio, and let's create one for our playing the game and one for quitting our application, okay. So let's go to bottom, and over here we will create public void, okay, play game or play a function, make first bracket and some curly brackets, and also make one for exit, okay. So I'm gonna make public void, and this time will be exit, and make first bracket and some curly brackets. So what we want to do inside this play function, we want to play our game, or we just want to load up this sample scene, okay. If I move to that, as you can see, the name of the scene is sample scene, or you can pass the build index of it, which is 1, as you seen in scenes in build, okay. So what I want to do, so I want to load up, okay. So why we made this function public, because if I go to menu scene one more time and go to canvas, then select this play button and go to inspector, scroll to the bottom side. As you can see, so we need to drag the script right over here, and we can choose the function, okay, which is we will choose for this play button our play function. Okay, so that's why. Okay, so in play function, what I want to do, I want to load up the sample scene or the game scene we want. So we have to use this function. It's called scene manager dot load scene, we know, and in brackets, in quotation, we have to pass the scene name or the build index we can. So I'm gonna pass the scene name, which is sample scene, okay, or the game scene, and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code. Now let's go to Unity and let's hook that function to this play button. Okay, so when we try to click on this play button, that function will call out, and we know what that function is doing. It's just loading up the sample scene we and in quotation we passed. Okay, you can pass any scene you want, it's totally up to you. Okay, so just wait for to compile, and let's hook that function to this play button. Okay, so hit this plus icon in the bottom side. Okay, and you need to drag the game object, in which game object the script is sitting on, we know, in scene management. So let's drag there, and in scene management game object we attach this scene management script, and scene management script we created that play function. So let's choose that for our play button. Okay, now we have chosen that function. Now if I click on this play button and try to click the play button, okay, we will load up the game scene or the sample scene that we want to load out. Okay, so just wait, and if I click on this play button now, as you can see, we loaded up the game scene or the sample scene, as you can see, and we can pass through. Okay, and now if I click on this menu button one more time, as you can see, we loaded up our menu scene. Okay, but we need to deal with this exit button now. When we try to click on this exit button, we should exit out our application. But the problem is, I'm gonna unplay this. In Unity editor, it will not gonna exit out your application. Once you made the application totally and try to goes to click on this exit button, okay, it will exit out your application, else it will not. Okay, in Unity editor it will not happen. Okay, so we will still gonna check if this button is really working or not. Okay, so let's go to script one more time, and let's go to this exit function. So for exit out application, we have to use this application dot quit function. Okay, and this function over here will quit our application or gonna exit out our application. Okay, but in Unity editor it will not happen, it will not gonna exit out our application. Okay, so to check this function is really or working or not, we will print out a message something like says exit. Okay, so let's do that. So before we exit, so let's print out a message. So debug.log we have to type for printing out message. In quotation, we let's say something like exit. Okay, and let's close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now and select this exit button, and let's hook that exit function to this exit button. Okay, and we know what exit button is doing, exit function is doing. Firstly, it's printing out the message says exit, and after that we quitting our application. But in Unity editor it will not happen. Okay, once you made the application totally and try goes to click on this exit application button, it will exit out your application. Okay, so let's choose this exit button, scroll down to the bottom, hit this plus icon. So let's drag the game object right there. So let's choose the script first and then the function, which is for this exit button, our exit function. Okay, so let's choose it. Now if I select the console, I'm gonna clear this and hit this play button and try to goes to click on this exit button. Okay, firstly we printing out the message says exit, and then we quitting the application. But we do know that if I click on this exit, as you can see, the exit message getting popped up in the console says exit. But as you can see in Unity editor, it's not happening, it's not quitting our application anyway. Okay, even I try to click on this multiple times, but once you made the application completely and try goes to click on this exit function, okay, or basically this exit button, it will exit out your application totally. So I hope you get the basics idea of it, how basically you can quit any application and you can just play around with that. Okay, now if I click on this play button, we will play our game now. And then when the game gets over and click on this menu button, we going to menu scene. And if I click on this menu play button one more time, as you can see, we playing our game. So I hope you get the basics idea of it, how buttons works, and how you can load up any scene you want. Okay, so I'm gonna play this now. Okay, I want to change the font. Okay, so I have custom font over here in my assets. I will have a link in the description, and also the button icon. Okay, I have over here in my project. So I will also give the link in the description as well for this one. All of the sprite I am using for this project will be linked in the description. Okay, you can go ahead and check that out. Okay, so let's begin with our to change our font. So select the button first. Inside of that, as you can see, the text. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna replace this text font. So go over to font. Okay, go over to font and drag select that font, click on this icon slot, or what you can do, select the font right over here and drag it out there. So as you can see, it's now changed. It seems pretty cool. So I'm gonna increase the font size. Before it, I also want to change this square to a button, something like I have over here in my project tab. So what we need, select the button, or go to image section in the top right corner in the inspector. Okay, go to image, and it said UI spread or UI sprite. Okay, you can select over here, or what else you can do, drag that sprite. Okay, and drag it to this source image. As you can see, now it's changed. Okay, but it seems weird. So what we gonna do, in image component in the bottom section, click on set native size. Now as you can see, it's totally fine, but I'm gonna scale down this button a little bit, something like this. So hold down alt on your keyboard, it will be resized from center like this. And I also want to change the color of this text of that text inside of that button. To do so, select the text and go over to color field. Oh, sorry. Okay, color field. Okay, and choose the color you want. So I'm gonna choose with this white color. Okay, so let's do the same thing as well for our this exit button. So choose the exit button. Okay, go over to image component first, source image, and drag the image right over there, and click on set native size. Hold alt on your keyboard to resize it from center like this. Okay, and I'm gonna drag this exit button a little bit over here. Let's scale it up in the Y, and let's change the color, the text inside of that button as well. Okay, and drag the font out there. So select the text and go over to text component, then font, and drag the font right into this slot says font. Okay, now it's get changed. Okay, so I hope it will work fine. If I hit this play button and try to click on this play button, it will play our game, and try to click on this exit button, it will exit out our game. So all of the things will be gonna run after it well. Okay, even we did these things. So now if I click, as you can see, it's playing our game. So what I want to do, I also want to change this button text and of this UI text, you can say. So let's do that. So let's move to our game scene where we do playing our game. So let's go move to scenes folder, then sample scene, and click on save whatever you have done to your menu, and go to canvas, then select this font, sorry, this text right over here, and go over to font. Okay, in text component, and over there drag the font out here. So let's select the font and drag it out here. Now it's gets changed. So I'm gonna scale the font a little bit up so we can see a little more. Okay, something like this, 120 I guess would be fine. Okay, and let's select this game over panel. Let's set this one to be active, and let's change this text as well. To do so, firstly I'm gonna go over to click on this arrow, and then go to retry button. Okay, for retry button, drag the icon over there, the button icon, source image. Just do the same thing as we did for menu. Okay, so I'm gonna scale this up a little bit, hold down all, sorry, hold down alt on your keyboard to scale it up from center like this. Okay, and I want to change the color of that retry to something white, and let's drag the font out there inside that text, and do the same thing for our menu button. So select that menu button, firstly drag the source image right to source image field, let's scale it up, hold down alt to on your keyboard to resize it from center like this. Okay, and let's change the color inside of that text. I'm going to drag it over here. So let's go to text underneath our menu button, then component, text component, and then color fill, let's choose it white and drag the font out here. So select the font from the tab and drag it out here. As you can see, it seems pretty cool, but I don't know why it's a little bit weird, but it's kind of okay. Okay, so let's go over to game high score text. Let's also change the font style, drag the font out there. Okay, I'm gonna make it something like 100 would be fine, and let's do for game over as well. Okay, so let's drag the font out there and let's make it a little bit of 100 as well. Now it's done. So go over to game main game object, select the main game object, game over panel, then go to inspector in the top right, click on overrides and click on apply all. So it will change in the prefab as well. We made it prefab, so it will change in the prefab as well. So I'm gonna uncheck this. By default this will be unchecked, and let's move over to menu scene now. Okay, so let's go over to scenes folder, then menu, double click to open it up and click on save whatever you have done with your sample scene or the game scene. Now if I hit this play button, we should able to see our game will be fine and will be played okay. Okay, and the last thing we have left to do our making our game. Okay, okay, so as you can see, we can play our game and we can make high score and all of the things like this. As you can see, one thing we have to left to do, which is making our application now, and also one more thing, that is audio. Okay, but for this complete tutorial I'm not gonna talk about audio, how you can include it. I will make a separate series of that audio, how you can play around audio with Unity game engine, and through your code you can play your audio clip wherever you want. Okay, I also have a couple of videos on my channel on audio, how you can start with audio. I will have link in the description as well of them, of those videos. Okay, so I hope you get the basics idea of how you can change color, button icons. I will have all of the links in the description. You can check them out one by one if you do want. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. So I'm gonna go to menu, and one thing we have left to do now is that we need to make our application. So let's do that. Okay, for this now I guess you have, or I hope you get the idea of it. Okay, now we have only one thing left to do, that is we need to make our application. Okay, to make our application, you need to head over to top left side. It says file, click on that. Okay, click on it and go over to bottom side, says build settings, and the shortcut key for it is control shift plus B. Okay, so click on it and make sure you drag it out, all of the scenes out here over here. Okay, if it's not, just select the scene and drag it out here like this. Okay, I have all of the scenes by default out here. I drag it the menu. Okay, so I have, so once you are fine, click on this clear settings in the bottom section. Okay, click on it, and then you have to choose the company name as you wish. It will be default company. Okay, you can choose any, you can just name it as your studio name. It's totally up to you. I name it as my YouTube channel. Okay, so as you can see, bad code, and you can also name the product, which is the application, as you wish. I name it to dodge the blocks. Okay, and you can drag any icon over here. So default icon, if you do have a custom icon in your project tab in assets, then you can select that and drag it out here, basically the sprite or the image. Okay, or over here you can select like this. You can select so I'm gonna go with this black one, black and white. Okay, and in the go, let's go to resolution and presentation. Leave it to full screen window, and you can check this one resizable window. It's totally up to you. Just mess around with and you're gonna get hang of it. Okay, and let's go to other splash image section now. And if I click this preview, as you can see, we can see now our preview. Okay, as you can see, you can change the background color as you wish. So you just have to scroll down a bottom a little bit, and you can choose a background color. Click on it and you can choose any color you like. Okay, I'm just gonna go with this red, and now it's fine. And you can also add up a custom like logo. Okay, underneath if I click on this preview, as you can see, we have the Unity logo by default loading up. Okay, if you do want a custom logo, so you need to go over to this logo section. Okay, logos, and hit this plus icon, and over here you can drag the sprite or the logo as you wish to be in the opening your game. Okay, so I'm gonna choose this let's for example. And now if I click on this preview, as you can see, our logo is playing top of Unity logo. I'm not gonna add up any logo, so I'm gonna remove this. So hit this plus icon in the top in the bottom right. Okay, so click on that, it will be removed. And let's move to other setting. So we don't have to do anything in other settings, so I'm gonna leave with it. You can play around with this. Okay, so if you making for Android, then you have to go to publishing setting, then other setting, and you need to change couple of things at once. Okay, for PC I guess you should not have to do it. Okay, you can just go as usual. So once you done all of the things, so cut this tab now and click on this build in run. Okay, click on this build and run. So in assets, make a separate build folder if you wish. Okay, to make it a little more organized. So go over to click on build on run, build and run, right click. Okay, then new, then name select this folder and name the folder something like build as you wish. And once you done, select that folder, and Unity will prepare our application. Okay, and we can directly play the game. Okay, right away once the application is totally made. So just wait, it will take couple of minutes for the first time, and once you make for the next time, it's just gonna take something like 1 second, even 2 second. It's still depend upon on your system. Okay, it's totally depend. If you do have a fast system, then I guess this time would be much less. Okay, much less, something like in blink of an eye you can just check the game will be run. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. So just wait, once it's totally the application made for us, we can play it. Okay, so just wait, it's taking time, about 1 second. I already made couple of times, so that's why it's going too much fast, basically making the game or the application right away in just an second, in just about 1 second I guess. So once you done, for Android it can take up to 20 minutes, but it still depend upon on your system. Okay, so just wait for to compile, or compile, sorry, wait for to Unity to make our application. Once it's done, play the application and you're gonna be fine. Okay, in the future tutorial we will cover up the audio, how we can deal with it. I will make a separate video on it. As you can see now, the game is loaded up, it's succeeded. If I go to console, as you can see, build completed with result, and now we get popped up with our game. Now if I click on this play button, as you can see, we can play our game. Okay, and make some high score. And if I click on this retry, we can retry the level one more time, as you can see. And if I click on this menu, we getting over to menu scene. And now if I click on this exit button, we should exit out our application, as I told many times during this tutorial. Okay, so now if I click on this exit, as you can see it's get exited out our application. So I hope you get the idea how you can make a simple casual game in Unity game engine. Okay, it was totally pretty fun to make. Okay, and lastly, thanks for watching this complete tutorial. I hope you enjoyed a lot making it. Okay, and lastly, thanks for watching this video. Goodbye. I will see you in the next tutorial. Okay, goodbye.